How about the Constitution? Looks good on paper. I think, the Constitution has a lot of valid ideas and thoughts. But you see that the contradictions that exist in this country are created out of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Otherwise, Constitution is nothing but white people's paper. It's advantageous and it's favorable for white people. They created contradictions to the Constitution when they added the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment.
The money interests took advantage of America's desire to free the slaves and found a way to use the swiftly adopted post-war constitutional amendments to enslave all of the people. The deceit is in the wording of both the 13th and 14th Amendments. You will note that the 13th Amendment provides that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States. But why the emphasis on involuntary servitude? Isn't it the same thing as slavery? Sure it is. But they had to mention the concept of involuntary servitude because they wished to retain another type of slavery, voluntary servitude. Voluntary servitude is an ancient and established concept. It was the way serfs became subjects to their lords during feudal times in England and other European countries. It was a way for free men to earn a living at a time when all property was held by a select few, and thus anyone who wanted to farm and support their family had first to agree to be subject to a lord of the land. Our forefathers hated this concept and designed our Constitution to exclude titles of nobility, making all Americans sovereign. The 14th Amendment turned the intention of the founders on its ear by making voluntary servitude a requirement for former slaves to gain the rights already guaranteed to free-born United States citizens. When the slaves were released from their involuntary servitude following the war, their status was changed from that of being property to that of being a person. But being a person still entitled them to none of the rights associated with citizenship. So the 14th Amendment ostensibly was written to provide the former slaves with the same constitutional rights of free-born American citizens, but only if they agreed first to become subject to the jurisdiction of the corporate United States. Making oneself paramountly, that is, first subject to the jurisdiction of the laws of the United States, however, limits access to parts of the Bill of Rights, as we'll explain in a moment. But first remember, anyone who voluntarily subjects himself to the laws or jurisdiction of another is, in every way, obligated to abide by the terms of any contracts or laws established by whomever establishes the rules of the contract. In simple terms, this meant that the former slaves became subjects first to the United States, and secondly to the state in which they lived. They had no sovereignty whatsoever. This status had never existed in the United States prior to that time. The 14th Amendment created a new class of citizenship in the United States, a second-class citizenship.
All of these foreigners are living off of us good, working white people. And fix up your own country and try to get your own country to...
Well, there's no question that there's a direct relationship between images and self-esteem. It goes all the way back to Tarzan, to Superman, to Rambo, to Batman, to even painting the image of Jesus Christ as white. I mean, you can't separate racism from anything. So it's not unlikely then that you have Pope Julius commissioning Michelangelo in 1505 to paint Jesus Christ white. Images control self-esteem. Abraham Lincoln found out very early, when you have 300 slaves on a plantation and one master, it takes a lot of work. Why don't you let them go? But don't teach them who they are. Control their history. Control their images. Then you won't have to watch them. Whoever controls the mind will also control the body.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with.
There were 1 million black boys last year that wanted to play in the NBA. Of that million, only 400,000 will even make it to play high school ball. Of that 400,000, only 4,000 will be able to make it to play college ball. Of that 4,000, only 35 will make it to the NBA. Of that 35, only 7 start. And the average life in the NBA is 4 years. So the real problem is we have 1 million brothers looking for 7 full-time jobs that last 4 years. And yet last year we had 100,000 jobs available to be a computer programmer, engineer, or doctor, and only 1,000 brothers qualified. So our appeal to black males is to realize the odds. That you do most will be that you do best. I mean, we were the first doctor, not Hippocrates, Imhotep. So we have the ability either in math or science or music and sports. But that you do most will be that you do best. If you play basketball from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, you'll be a very good basketball player. If you went home and went to the library, you'd be a very good scholar. We need more black male role models that will encourage our youth in math and science.
See, America, in terms of where she goes and like who she controls, a whole sphere of influence is diminishing. America is fighting on about 5 to 6 different fronts right now. Latin America, like Africa, Middle East, and Vietnam, and here domestically. So I think that, given the system and given that it operates off the military-industrial complex, which means that war is profitable and that, like General Steel, USS Steel must make steel for tanks to hire people, to give people jobs so they can spend the money to buy other goods. The very fact that the system operates off that principle means that when the man comes back, when the man is run out of every country, then it will become necessary to wage war in his own country.
This is an utter contradiction to what a lot of politicians said, that when the war in Vietnam ends, then we can use all that money to sort of solve our racial ills here.
No, it's not true, you see, because money has never been a problem for this country in terms of allotting money, because, you see, money here is not based on gold. It's not really based on the goods that produce. This is the lie that's been told, and it's been sold to black people as green power. Green power is a myth, see, because as long as a man possesses the power to change the color of money, then, like the color of money is not significant in struggle. He can give black people all the green money in the world and tell them they're using red money tomorrow. Black people have to go work for red money. In terms of what he did to the international monetary system. Now, the United States has a budget, annual budget of $800 billion. They had only $12 billion worth of gold. In terms of their foreign spending, it exceeded the quantity of gold that they had in this country. So France was putting pressure on the United States by demanding payment in gold from paper currency. So what the United States did was that the United States said, okay, we're going to change the rules. They put pressure on the international monetary system, and they changed the whole international monetary standards from gold to paper gold. And they did that because they have power. Not because the money they had was so good. They had power.
You're free. And what did freedom give us? So you have now all of these hundreds of years of slavery, hundreds of years of it. And then people will say, well, there's always been slavery, Joy. There's always been slavery. Matter of fact, you people enslaved. And there is, in fact, truth to that. People did have slaves, but not the kind of slavery that Americans had. Romans had slaves. I mean, almost every society had slaves, but not like America had slaves. Because American slavery, most people enslaved people of their own race, first of all. That's what happens. And that person was not considered less than human. Africans were considered less than human. They were considered de facto slaves because of the Aristotelian notion of a natural slave. The color of the skin raises a presumption of slavery, said Aristotle, which deems them fitted to slavery permanently. They will never, ever reach the bastions of normalcy as it relates to whiteness. They will never be fully human. 3/5. So what we have to understand is that the nature of American chattel slavery was unlike anything anywhere else, nor did anything else share in its duration. So we're talking about a real severe process.
How do I recommend reasoning with a conspiracy theorist? I'm right now, the last couple months, I've been messing around with this idea of cognitive dissonance. This is to say, you have a worldview, you're presented with evidence that conflicts with the worldview, so you either have to change your worldview, which is hard, because you've lived your whole life with it, or you just dismiss the evidence and dismiss the authorities that may have provided the evidence. So you dismiss the evidence so that you don't have this discomfort, this conflict in your mind, this dissonance. That's what I'm working with right now. And apparently the way to overcome that is to say, we're all in this together. Let's learn about this together. Present the conspiracy theorist with the idea that he or she may be rejecting evidence because it's just so uncomfortable. And you're in it together. We're in it together. I'm uncomfortable too. But when it comes to moon landings, just ask the person how you would generate all that paperwork. The warehouses full of documentation that NASA created to make landings on the moon would overwhelm anybody trying to do it on the side. It'd just be very difficult to print all that. And just understand it's a process. Somebody who has a worldview that's inconsistent with evidence, and I may have some, it takes a while for you to turn around. Like the example of palm reading or astrology, it's not something people reverse their ideas about immediately. It takes, in my experience, it takes about 2 years for somebody to sort of look at palm reading, look at cold reading or a tarot card reading for a while, and then realize that these tarot card readers, palm readers, are just taking information that you've given them, the client's given them, and feeding it back to you. It takes a long time. In the same way, people who are anti-vaccine, I think, have just lost sight of the history.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God, stop fucking lying.
Vaccines, you know, part of the reason I'm able to be here talking with you is my grandparents did not die in 1918 during the Spanish flu, when it is estimated 50 million people died. Twice as many people as were killed in combat in World War I died of this disease. If you go to old cemeteries, you can see these tombstones of very young people died of the flu. So people have just lost sight of history, and we all tend to go, well, look at the facts.
Look at the facts.
There's too much corruption, too much conflict of interest, and our children are paying the price.
Well, it is an incredibly controversial subject, to say the least. But those protesters outside the CDC here in Atlanta say that the information being provided to the public about vaccines is not completely honest.
Well, look at the facts.
And it was on August 27th of 2014 that Dr. Thompson made an admission that got very little media coverage, but it was a major statement. That statement read in part, quote, I regret that my co-authors and I omitted statistically significant information in our 2004 article published in the journal Pediatrics. The omitted data suggested that African American males who received the MMR vaccine before age 36 months were at increased risk for autism. Decisions were made regarding the findings of the report as the data was collected, and I believe that the final study protocol was not followed.
Look at the facts.
Thompson has claimed that he's handed over documents about this case to Congressman Bill Posey's office. Now, I spoke with the congressman's office about that, and the spokesman confirms to me that thousands of documents were handed over, but sources within that office tell me as many as 100,000 documents were actually handed over. Congressman Posey brought this information to the floor of Congress, and what he read there was nothing short of stunning. That authors of the study not only hid the actual findings, but attempted to destroy evidence. Quoting from Dr. Thompson, the authors of the study decided not to disclose to the public that African American boys under 36 months were more susceptible to developing autism or autism-like symptoms from the MMR vaccine.
Look at the facts.
The remaining 4 co-authors all met and brought a big garbage can into the meeting room and reviewed and went through all the hard copy documents that we had thought we should discard and put them in a huge garbage can. However, because I assumed it was illegal and would violate both FOIA and DOJ requests, I kept hard copies of all documents in my office, and I retained all associated computer files. I believe we intentionally withheld controversial findings from the final draft of the pediatrics paper.
So just in case you missed it there, Dr. Thompson, that statement, by the way, read into the congressional record, a CDC scientist and an author of the study in the journal Pediatrics that insisted there is no link between vaccines and autism, admits that he and other authors of that study left out information that was deemed controversial. Information that in some African American male children who are given the MMR vaccine, the measles vaccine, before 36 months, did have an increased risk of autism and signs of autism. And that not only did the CDC hide that information, but that the authors of the study threw that evidence into a trash can and destroyed it.
White man, white woman, black man, black woman. On the rungs. And we're holding on to the last rung. And those, see this are being trampled on by all those 3 above. And still we hold on. Okay? That's our strength. That's the reason we survive. Because we will not let go of that rung.
Wow. Okay. I get that. I could cry.
I know.
I get
because
it.
It's true.
I get it.
Question. With regard to the religion practice during the independence, how did that play a part? I know you talked about how the 3 things that pretty much help in our deterioration. Religion with the church, media, and school. What part did religion play in the independence of the Haitian people?
First of all, I have to say that our system, African system, Taino system, we don't really have religions. Religion is a business that has a set of dogma to sell a type of God. And if you're not buying my God, none of the other gods, they're all devils. That's the religion. We're not into religion when you're into voodoo. Mungan or Mambo, a voodoo priest, has no problem telling you, all right, he sees that you describe about such and such. You could go to the church and pray, or go to the mosque and pray, or go to the river and pray. It's all the same to him. These are different spaces that can bring you the peace you need to the interior. So it makes no difference to him where you go. But wherever he thinks you will find solace, he will send you. Okay? So he's not into a religion because he doesn't have a set of dogma. You can't do this and you can't do that. So voodoo has a lot to do with the Haitian Revolution, because that's what most of us practiced then. We were just a few years away from them saying we're not supposed to go into their church, we can't be baptized, we can't be married, we can't this, we can't that. So the only system we had was what we knew. Okay? Now, when they saw us succeeding with our own stuff, now they start saying, no, that's the devil, you can't do that. You got to be good Christian. So we said, okay, fine, we'll be good Christian too. So we go to church, and you give us the Virgin Mary, fine. This will be the Virgin Mary. But when I have a real problem, Virgin Mary, listen, you know you have to leave too. But when the white man comes, oh, Hail Mary, hop in heaven, you know, so it was at first, you know, we took the pictures and the stuff they gave, and we used it according to circumstances. If the white man was there, then I was the most feverish Catholic there was. But if he wasn't there, then Saint Jacques became Ogun, and so became something else and whatever. But the whole thing about voodoo, I don't need any image, I don't need anything in particular. I'm dealing with spirit. So I can decide that this tablecloth is Ogun, because the Ogun spirit is there. When I come here and need to deal with the Ogun spirit, I find it there. But if you take the tablecloth to burn it, I don't need it there. Ogun will go here. And if you're going to burn this, Ogun will go in the red chair. Red chair will become the symbol. So it could change any time what the representation that we do. But the thing that matters is the spirit. I said before, the priest could send you to church, to the mosque, or any place else. But he'll always also tell you the most powerful place you can go is either the sea, the river, the forest. Because in the church you have to have specific, you will find specific forces, but when you go to the sea you have it all. When you go to the river you have it all. When you go to the forest, it's all there. Or the cemetery. You know, people make a big deal about cemeteries, but cemeteries is a place that is full of energy, full of, you know, so there are many things you need to do when you have to do them. When you go there, you're in contact with all kinds of spirits that you need, and spirits who are looking for a material support.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Thank you.
It's you liberals who have lifted them up, Howard.
Paul, you conservatives make a mistake. You can't afford to strangle hope in people. Without hope, people become dangerous.
No, Howard, you liberals have let them invade our society. You give them jobs, political jobs.
Paul, you missed the point. It's only the smart ones we move up.
That makes it even worse.
No, you know, we have to move them up. If we leave a smart one in the ghetto, he might develop into a leader against us. But if we raise him up into white society, we neutralize him. He feels compelled to try to act like us. He loses his identity and his racial anger, if he has any. He becomes alien to his brothers. They realize he sold them out and they grow to hate him. He becomes worthless to them and safe for us. No, thank you. In fact, in his love for the creature comforts, except for his color, he's become one of us.
If you like boogie woogie rhythm, she's gotta be. That's a boogie woogie. Watch a woman give you a treat. On every afternoon, that's when the sessions begin. And all the boys from all the bands come down and sit in. They sit around and knock each other out when they play. While the boogie woogie watch woman watch it all day. Run me up, that's just the way she runs. Run me up, that's just the way she runs. Run me up, she wears her all and does. She rubs and rubs and knuckles right on down to the nut. Run me up, that's how she kicks it off. Run me up, she keeps the mountains off. Run me up, someone is on from me, mama, with the boogie beat. You really are twisted there if you've never been. It doesn't cost a penny, just come down and walk in. If you like boogie woogie rhythm, you'll get a treat. That's the boogie woogie, what you wanna get to the beat. Ready up down!
Rubbly up down. She rubbed and rubbed the knuckles right on down to the nub, yeah.
And she keeps it nice and soft. So someone hold it on. Scrub me, mama, with a boo-hoo-hoo, give me. Scrub, scrub, rub, rub, rubbing all day. Scrub, 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 scrubbing away. Scrub me, mama, me, mama, rub me, mama. Scrub me, mama, mama.
But my grandfather, before he died, told me of the things they would do. He said he would go down, he said his grandfather said they would go down and they would take babies with them. I said, what do you mean babies? He says, well, let me tell you. He said the slave babies, the slaves who had babies, they would steal the babies during the course of the day, sometimes when the mothers weren't washing. I said, what do you mean babies? I said, you mean babies like 5 or 6 years old? He says, no. These babies, some would be infants, some would be a year old. He said some would be toddlers. He said they would grab these children and take them down to the swamp and leave them in pens like little chicken coops. They would go down there at night, take these babies and tie them up because they hunted the big bull alligators. These big bull alligators were not raised on the farms. They were in the wild. These alligators would weigh 600, 700, 800 pounds. Those are the ones they wanted. They would skin them, make the wallets, get the meat, do different things with them. He said, but what they were doing was tie them up, put a rope around their neck and around their torso, around here, and tie it tight. He said, the baby, I said, well, what would the babies be doing? He said, well, my grandfather said they'd be screaming. He said, what would you do? He said, say, just let them scream. He said, what they would do, it would help them to chum the water. He said, when they would throw the babies in tied to this rope, he said, in a matter of minutes, he said, the alligators were on them. He said the alligators would clamp his jaws on that child. As a matter of fact, once he clamped on him, he was really swallowed. You couldn't see anything but the rope. And we would pull the alligator in and tie his nose and hit him in the head with an axe, a pickaxe. He said we would then drag him to the shore. We'd drag him to the shore and leave him lay, and we would do it again, maybe 2 or 3 times a night. He said, I said, so what do you mean? He said, well, yeah, they were taking these babies and killing them for alligator bait. I said, so all these things I've been collecting, all these things I've been collecting are really, really something that I can really talk about and say they're of a truth by what you say. He said, I'm telling you, he said, nobody wants to talk about it. He said, I'm only telling you because you're here. I may never hear from you again. He said, but these things actually depict the acts that they did to slave babies back in the Bayou country and down the south. They did this. They hunted alligators with these babies. That's why they call alligator bait.
Thank you all. Terror, terrorist, terrorism, terror, 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 terrorist, 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 terror organization, terrorist attacks, terror, terrorism, terrorist network, terrorist attacks, terrorist group, terrorists, terrorist, terror, terror, terrorist, terrorist, terrorists, instruments of terror, a terror network, terror cells, terrorists, terrorizing terror and murder, terrorism, terrorists, or terrorist, tool of terror and torture.
Attention, please. This film, now released for public showing, has been captured from the enemy. It is a typical example of vicious Japanese propaganda. And now please to observing a look at listening post. Over here are honorable aircraft spotter. Now we are showing you fire prevention headquarters. Oh, Sanagan, too late.
The Washita are the dark-skinned original inhabitants of North and South America. They have been referred to as the pre-Columbian civilizations, the prehistoric mound builders, the diggers, and the ancient ones. Certified legal documents of colonial and Spanish and French explorers identified the Washita as the ancient occupants of America. The Washita Nation are akin to the Moors of Northwest Africa and are responsible for building the highly advanced geometric earthworks and sacred burial mounds found all over this continent.
People always ask, who are the mound builders? When did they exist? The mound builders are the indigenous original inhabitants of North and South America. The mound builders did not exist in a vacuum in one time period. We have always been here, and we shall always be here.
Modern science teaches that all the continents on the earth were once connected in one piece of land. They call it Pangea. Washita history actually says the same thing as do the scriptures. The Washita, the indigenous people of this land that we now call America, were on this land when it was connected in one piece. When this land was connected to what is now called Africa, the Washita were on this land that we call America. So the Washita do not come from anywhere. We did not come to America from someplace else. We were already here. We have always been here. Back to the time when scientists called the land Pangea, when it was one piece. So we have always been on this land. Poverty Point, located in Pioneer, Louisiana, near Monroe, is recognized as the second largest earthen pyramid in North America. This ancient site, called the Great Bird Mound by the natives, was a cultural center for the advanced temple, mound, pyramid civilization. Poverty Point, as it is currently called, is located in northeastern Louisiana in Washita Parish in the city of what is now called Monroe, or near Monroe. The Washita referred to it as the Bird Mound because there is a very large earthen mound in the shape of a bird with outstretched wings. In some places it measures 70 feet high. The wingspan of the bird is 640 feet, and it actually measures 710 feet from the head to the tail. At the base of the bird, at the foot, there are 6 concentric ridges composed of earth, and the Washita actually had their homes located on these ridges that at one time measured as high as 5 feet.
In a Western education world, Poverty Point has been identified as the oldest community in North America, in that Poverty Point was a complete city in construction. Its dynamics, it's the civil engineering that went to design the city has been copied for thousands of years, and the community is in the shape of a concentric rings, several concentric rings, and these rings are duplicated over and over again in the U.S. Congress, where the seats are laid out, in the Roman Senate. You go to most entertainment venues, a theater, there you'll find that modern-day theaters that are acoustically designed are in the same formation as Poverty Point. And Poverty Point being a place that is known to be as old as, or as young as, 12 centuries before the birth of Christ. When you speak of Poverty Point, you speak of a time that wasn't supposed to exist. Poverty Point, at its height, not its beginning, but at its height, was at least 1,000 years before any agriculture was supposed to occur in North America. So Poverty Point has served as an anomaly for years when scientists came in and archaeologists came in and argued that there's no way this could exist. As archaeologists go and do research, they don't even have a name for the time period that they find artifacts at Poverty Point. And what's more, at Poverty Point, not only did they find artifacts there that would date back 1,000 years, but they were enduring years, and that these people showed a legacy of continuous occupation at Poverty Point. In that I mean that they would do research and they would dig down 1 foot, and they might find something that was 4,000 years old. A few more inches, find something 5,000 years old. Further down, 6,000 years old. So here you have evidence of a legacy of continuous occupation.
Ignore.
just refuse to publish any facts of African history that don't go along with our racial theories.
We need to create a religious and a scientific doctrine so that African slavery won't appear that bad after all.
What we need to do is flood the world with new African histories that contain our European perspectives only.
Well, my theory was, I wrote the paper in 1969. I wrote a paper called The Crest Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism. And the sole reason behind writing that paper was an attempt to understand the behavior of white people in relationship to all people of color, every place in the world, black, brown, red, and yellow people. And the paper was presented to the Americans at the National Medical Association, the section on psychiatry, in neurology, because back in 1969, the Black Caucus in the American Psychiatric Association, we had said that racism, and when we talk about racism, we're talking about the white supremacy behavior of white people. That racism was the #1 mental health problem in the nation, and it was the #1 cause of other mental health problems. And I wanted to understand what this thing of racism really is all about, because it's the thing that has caused woe and misery and suffering for the vast majority of the people on this planet that are classified as non-white. And in my attempt to understand why the necessity of white people to keep saying that white is superior and that the condition of non-white is inferior, and the more I thought about it, in conjunction with an idea that a friend of mine had, that racism was a worldwide behavioral system for the maintenance of white supremacy by a small minority of people, I put those ideas together with what we know about genetics, what we know about the condition of skin whiteness itself. The condition of skin whiteness is the genetic inability to produce skin pigment called melanin. This is a genetic recessive trait. It is a genetic deficiency state, not as defined by Francis Welsing, but defined by geneticists and dermatologists, that the inability to produce the skin pigment of melanin or melanin pigment is described as albinism. And I think that white people, even though most white people are not consciously understanding their problem in genetics, they are certainly aware that they are genetically dominated by people of color. That's why it was a statement, one drop of black blood makes you black, because people of color have the genetic capacity to annihilate white people. And so unless white people control the reproductivity of people of color, then we can postulate that perhaps one day there won't be any white people. And I think that the very survival of white people necessitates that they project genetic inferiority on people of color, because it is they who really are aware that they are genetic recessive and perhaps genetically inferior to people of color. And I am not saying this to call the condition of skin whiteness to say, well, no, white people are inferior. I'm not saying it for that purpose, but I think that it is of prime importance for the majority of people in the world to understand why it is that white people have to, the effective majority, large numbers of white people, have to move in a hostile and an aggressive way against people of color, and have to constantly focus on it's you who's genetically inferior, because they realize that there's something wrong with their genetic status.
Start renaming people and places. Replace African names with Arabic and European names. This will disguise their true black identity.
Let's change the criteria for defining race. For example, one drop of Negro blood in America makes you a Negro, no matter how light the skin.
But now let me say, this chart that I held up a moment ago is very important in respect to this question of why I think there may be what proves a basic difference. But I'm going to say that if there were not a basic difference in intellectual capacity in the past, there probably will be a basic difference between black and white intellectual capacity in the future, simply because of the reproduction patterns. And these are Census Bureau data, and this is the most threatening aspect. And what it indicates is that for the black women of the lowest intellectual social class, which are rural farm women, generally the education is least, the average number of children is 5.4. For women with college degrees, it's 1.9. And so this is definitely unfavorable. It is reproducing far more at the bottom end and not enough to keep even at the top end.
Dr. Shockley, can
For
you
whites,
explain?
let me just finish this. For whites, the numbers are also in this direction, but nowhere nearly as severe.
Dr. Shockley, I think that in all fairness, you should explain to the audience why it is that you have, first of all, you have a very large segment of the black population who are on farms, who are deprived in cities. Why don't you explain at the time that you're showing this, who is keeping black people in a situation like they're in? I mean, it could be, you could turn it around the other way, where you could have very large numbers of black people who are exposed to educational opportunities like white people, who are exposed to housing, who are exposed to health facilities. Why don't you explain that at the same time that you put figures like that?
I'm sure you would explain it.
No, but
Yes, when reporting ancient African history, reverse the standard. No matter how dark the skin, woolly the hair, or thick the lips, you don't have to be a Negro.
When black contribution to civilization is too obvious, let's find a way to attribute it to outside white influences.
When all the ancient historians contradict your theory, we'll just discredit them.
I would like to ask a question, and Dr. Shockley, if you could answer it yes or no, I would appreciate it. Do you believe that black people are inferior in intelligence because of their heredity?
I have a standard statement. It is not yes or no. It's memorized. I say at the same time every time, I think. What I say is this. My research leads me, and it's a tragic conclusion, really. My research leads me inescapably to the opinion that the major cause of the American Negro's intellectual and social deficits is hereditary and racially genetic in origin, and thus not remediable to a major degree by practical improvements in environment.
What?
The major cause of the American Negro's intellectual and social deficits is hereditary and racially genetic in origin, and thus not remediable to a major degree by practical improvements in environment.
All right, if you believe that the position relatively of black Americans to white Americans is based on a genetic inferiority, and I will accept the responsibility for that word, then what do you see as the solution to the problem?
Well, I see the first aspect of this is to prevent the problem from becoming worse by dysgenics. This first word that
Would you
I
translate
mentioned.
dysgenics for me and the audience? Would that be sterilization?
No. Dysgenics, you see, means what that other chart I showed you says.
Should blacks,
the least effective element.
Should blacks be sterilized?
No. I have a...
but if blacks are a problem and we do not allow...
This is inhumane. And I think one can find more humane solutions to this.
Well, then how would...
Solutions to this.
Well, then how would... Then
See, you don't have a record, or of black police officers saying, "Oh, I shot that white male. I thought he had a weapon." There's no record of that. But we have, the record is, gross with innumerable instances of a white male in uniform, could be a 14-year-old black male or it could be a 45-year-old black male. I shot him, I thought he had a weapon. And then that's called justifiable homicide. Now I say deeper, what is going on is that within the white male's brain computer, is he looks at the black man and he thinks about the black man's genetic power that resides in the genitals. And that, in his mind, subconsciously, is a weapon. Do you see what I'm saying? Because, see, we never talk about these issues. These issues that I'm talking about, you see, I would guess that they've never been talked about in the history of television. You see, to talk about what is actually going on around this issue of fear of genetic annihilation.
We still haven't had reparations. We still haven't had like this healing, truth and reconciliation.
If we had reparations, would you be getting a check?
No, I'm not. I don't actually identify as African American. I identify as black.
And hip-hop is this. 1, 2, 3, 4, hit, ah, and ah. The more relaxed you are, that's what makes it hip-hop. This is the first thing I want to say to you. You want to do hip-hop? You got to stand like this. In a hip-hop head, we have this. Boom, bam, every time. Or Your hands are always, like this. Start out just hitting it, hitting it, hitting it,
Like, would somebody who moved here from Nigeria get a check? No. There's a Pan-African diaspora.
I took some of this from an African piece. In the African piece, it was like this, but in hip-hop, it's like this. See, there's a difference.
So I'm part of the Pan. We all go back to Africa.
It's all in your attitude. It's right here in your faces and how you dress. It's the way you look. I want to tell you another thing that makes hip-hop hip-hop.
Hip-hop dancing. Vaudeville. 2 steps, running man. Twist. Running man. Twist. Scissors. That's jamming.
Yeah, we all have a black mother eventually.
Hello? Understand, I'll cut your frickin' head off, you understand, you bitch. We're gonna kill you and your family. Now that little dog's in the backyard, I'd like to chop your head off, bitch.
What?
It's all lies about Trump. It's all twisted spin, half-baked BS. And then she did it to me. We have scored a direct stab in those sons of bitches' hearts. We gotta keep running the knife in, though, folks. We gotta keep running it in there, not worry what they're doing to us. Just, you want them to fight, you're getting it. The will of the Republic will dominate this BS. Yeah.
1776, baby.
1776 will commence again. You like it? This is just the info war. Imagine you get in a physical fight with us, it's over. You wanted to overrun us and poison us and take our families and kill us? You will die, not us. I'm a pioneer. I'm an explorer. I'm a human.
Get away from me, racist! She's God! He's on loose! He's on loose! You'll never stop me! Racist!
I've had enough. Let me explain something to the New World Order, okay? You're not getting our guns. 1776 started when you tried to get them, you bastards. And as Charlton Heston famously said, from my cold dead hand, you sons of bitches. Are you a Muslim to your 5-year-old kid? No. Boom, blow your brains out. That's not how you open a can of pickles. To feel what the children are feeling. God almighty. Folks, we gotta get good people to stand up against these people. God.
I will cry at a commercial. I'm interested in most phases of data processing.
Fire-breathing dragons.
Type A, I'm not. Comfortable, caring, and serious about a relationship, I am.
I'm really looking for somebody I can feel special about, and I don't encounter people like that very often, and I'm hoping you're one of them.
Where are the men in this world? What the hell have we become?
Are you that woman? Please give me a call.
And you know that a journey always begins with the first step. And I hope that if you like what I'm trying to say, or you'd like to know more about me, to please write.
Life is almost non-existent in the perceptual reality of the society that we're in. It's almost non-existent. They got religion, they got civilization, you know, they got military, they got politics, they got all education, they got all the stuff, but they don't have the spirit to live.
I want you to listen to this man speak. His name is John Trudell. I'm a member of the American Indian movement.
and I'm from the indigenous nations of the Western Hemisphere.
As the indigenous people, we have watched this thing happen on our hemisphere. We have seen what has happened. We have seen them come in and confuse and attack. We understand that the issue is the land, the issue is the earth. We cannot change the political system. We cannot change the economic system. We cannot change the social system until the people control the land, and then we take it out of the hands of that sick minority that chooses to pervert the meaning and the intention of humanity.
See, I have a real problem about all of this. I mean, see, to me, he was like a virus, a disease. But when I think about it, because I spent a lot of time protesting, trying to figure out how to deal with this disease. But I think that we really need to put serious thought into understanding that we're dealing with a disease. You know, it's like there's this predator energy on this planet. And this predator energy feeds upon the essence of the spirit, feeds upon the essence of the human being, the spirit. Now, this predator energy can take fossil fuel and other resources out of the earth, turn it into fuel to run a machine system. But in order for there to be a need for that system, and in order for that system to work, they have to mine our minds to get at the essence of our spirit. And the same way the external mining takes place, it pollutes. We see now, people understand how it poisons the environment, the water, the air, pollution. The mining of the essence, the mining of the spirit, mining our minds, the pollution from that is all of the neurotic, distorted, insecure behavior patterns that we develop. That's the pollution. Because in order for this predatory system, this disease, to work, we must not be able to use our minds in a clear, coherent manner. Because if we use our minds in a clear, coherent manner, we will not accept the unacceptable. But it's a disease, lives and travels through the mind, through the generations.
What I'm calling about to say is, I don't think I'm prejudiced, but if I would get on a bus and this gentleman, the first gentleman with the hair, would sit next to me, the way he's dressed,
he's talking about
you,
Mr. King.
I would grab my purse and probably move to another seat. It's because of his looks. It's scary.
That's because it's out of her culture.
Well, that's interesting. Clarify, madam, what you're saying. What does the word scary mean?
Oh, gee, I don't know.
Well, now would be a very good time to figure it out. What does the word scary mean? That is my question.
Well, you would frighten me.
I understand that.
General.
What does the word scary mean? Or, same question, why would I frighten you? I haven't been in a fight since I was in 8th grade.
Well, you're probably not normally dressed up in a suit. You just look like you're a tough guy.
If she went to Jamaica, she'd be frightened all the time.
Well, madam, let me then answer the question.
So what is it? Is it because of the way he's dressed, the color of his skin, or his hair? Is it his hair?
Yes, yes. And I'm sure he's not always dressed in a suit. You know, he'll
so does that mean you're frightened of all men who are not dressed in suits?
No, no.
Okay.
It's just the garb, I think, that would scare me.
Well, you know, this is interesting, madam. Let me then advance this point. I speak of the old racism, which was pre-Dr. Martin Luther King. I then speak of the new racism. One of the things you have to understand about racists or about yourself is racists are inherently intellectual cowards. They won't come out and say, I hate niggers because I hate niggers. Story over. What they will do is take pseudo-facts. They will take facts that are not true and use that as the intellectual pyramid to come to a conclusion that is inaccurate. If you actually want to talk about the statistics, if you are afraid of me on that bus, I don't ride on buses, because you think I'm going to murder you, there is no statistical basis for that. You are more likely to be murdered by your husband, by your son, by your brother. If you are afraid of me sitting next to you on that bus that I don't ride on, because you are afraid that I'm going to rape you, statistically, your boyfriend, your husband, is more probably going to be the rapist. So I'm saying you are the manifestation of the new racism, and you have used the same pseudo-intellectual statistics to construct a racist position.
President Johnson transmits the bill to Congress. As Attorney General,
The great lie is that it is civilization. It's not civilized. It has been literally the most bloodthirsty, brutalizing system ever imposed upon this planet. That is not civilization. That's the great lie, is that it represents civilization. That's the great lie. Or if it does represent civilization, and that's truly what civilization is, then the great lie is that civilization is good for us.
I read a book called Indians of the Americas, and I, after reading the book, realized that I knew nothing about the American Indian, and that everything that we are taught about the American Indian is wrong. It's inaccurate. And our school books are hopelessly lacking, perhaps criminally lacking, in revealing what our relationship was with the Indian. When we hear, as we've heard throughout all our lives, no matter how old we are, that we are a country that stands for freedom, for rightness, for justice, for everyone, it simply doesn't apply to those who are not white. It just simply doesn't apply. And we were the most rapacious, aggressive, destructive, torturing, monstrous people who swept from one coast to the other, murdering and causing mayhem among the Indians. There's one Indian in the...
There's no clear thought being exercised right now in the American public. They're allowing the insanity of the leaders, to make decisions, all right, that really are not in the best interest of the public. They're not in the best interest of the children of the public. They're not in the best interest of the grandchildren of the public. They're not in the best interest of the earth. They're not in the best interest of anyone.
And that isn't revealed, because we don't like that image of ourselves. We don't like to see us. We like to see ourselves as perhaps John Wayne sees us. And and also what we've learned about the Indians has been largely taught to us by Hollywood and by motion pictures. They have educated us. So we naturally believe that when the Indians came, that the wagons circled and the Indians rode around and subjected themselves to terrible fire and died at a ratio of 65 to 1.
Both barrels of a shotgun would always get 2 Indians.
Yeah, and that wasn't the way it was at all. But anyway, Indians have been tragically misrepresented in films and in our history books, in our attitudes, in our reporting. And so we must set about to re-educate ourselves.
We have lying dormant in us, we have a genetic memory. And in that genetic memory, there's knowledge. There's knowledge in that genetic memory, all right, that goes back to the ancient, to the beginning for us, right? And in this genetic memory, there was a time when we were all tribes. Every human being lived within a tribe. Every human being recognized this reality that the earth was the mother and the sun and the sky was the father. Father, sky, mother, earth. Recognized that in our totality as human beings, all right, our relationship was to that.
At a time when we say, especially, that we are going to keep our treaties and that we do keep our word and that we, above all people, do keep our word, I think it's important to mention that there have been nearly 400 treaties written by the United States in good faith with the Indians, and every single one of them was abrogated. Means broken or changed or altered.
From the political end, Ames' statement was same as Indians of all tribes, Alcatraz. You have a legal responsibility. Treaties are laws. By the Constitution, they're laws.
But when I look at America now, going back to the treaty, this American generation, they don't look at the treaty as having any validity. All right, well, I'm going to say that was an agreement made between their ancestors and my ancestors. And when they break that treaty like that, they're telling me they have no spiritual connection to their past, no respect for their past. And if we want to get down to the realities of checking legislation that's been passed in the U.S. Congress and doing our homework on agencies such as the Federal Bureau of Investigation and these energy mobilization boards, we'll find out that they now have all the rights and the individuals are losing the rights. And it's almost sometimes I feel like a war is being waged against us.
They lied to you, they confused you, they told you that you had freedom and democracy, but you go back, you read your Constitution, you read your Declaration of Independence, and you will see that the only people who could decide these freedoms were white males who owned property, and all the rest of us were excluded.
For more than 6 months, a band of American Indians has been living without government approval on Alcatraz Island, the rock that used to be a federal penitentiary. And all attempts to get them off have so far failed.
Welcome back. This is Radio Free Alcatraz from Indian Land, Alcatraz Island in California. This is John Trudell speaking for the Indians of all tribes, and for this portion of the show we had the government has been practicing a policy of taking what they need from the Indian people. Well, not necessarily what they need, taking what they want from us just about any time that they would like to do so, and they've been doing this through the years, are doing it today. And I would say that a large majority of the people out in the average American people aren't even aware that this is going on. And maybe that's why the government is allowed to get away with this.
The garbage is piling up. The lighthouse is broken, but they say it's no worse than living on a typical Indian reservation.
This is a country where all men are created equal, and it's the land of the free and the home of truth and justice and liberty for all. Well, we want to know why that doesn't apply to us. If this is the land of the free, then we want to know why we don't have the respect and dignity that all free men are accorded by other free men.
The government had declared Alcatraz surplus property. Young Indian nationalists, claiming an old treaty right to unneeded federal property, descended on the island 1 year ago today and took it over.
If there's ever going to be a generation of revolutionaries raised, people wanting change, these kids are getting good experience as to what Indian relationship is with the government. Because this has been, like all along the lines here, this has been a very peaceful protest.
We occupied the island in the name of the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. See, and the reality that that treaties are laws, so it was really about law, it was really about a legal issue, not a moral or an ethical issue with the government's responsibilities.
What Alcatraz meant was it meant for the first time we saw young Native people standing up and saying, we have rights. We have rights to the land, we have rights to our own government, and we want to be listened to, and we will be heard.
Now what we have here is the model of our island and how we're going to have it. We will become an international outlet worldwide for authentic Indian art. And this will establish our base income to run the island and our university.
Part of what we're saying on Alcatraz is that besides wanting the deed to the island for our cultural center, that we want to be treated as human beings, to be looked upon with respect as equals.
Well, I can understand they might feel that way, but I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that if the federal government felt as though they should come off, that they would come off and pretty fast.
Approximately a month before we were removed, the government called us together for a negotiation and said that they had a new proposal. They would lease us half of the island, and we could have jobs caretaking it. And they would give us $250,000. And we told them no, because it wasn't about that. We wanted them to legally recognize their responsibilities to the Native community, which we were representing. So for us, it was all or nothing. This is what it is that we need to have, and we will settle for nothing else. So they came in on June the 11th, a SOG team, Special Operations Group, a U.S. Marshals, and they took the people that were on the island off the island.
We were negotiating with the government concerning settling the Alcatraz issue, and they guaranteed us that no action would be taken against Alcatraz Indians as long as these negotiations were taking place. And then they turned around and they came out there and they took our people off the island. They called our attorney at 4:30 yesterday afternoon and told him that they would have word concerning the deed to the island. They would have it for us Monday morning. And that's what we were waiting for, and they came in, while they were doing one thing with their left hand, they came in with their right hand. They lied to us.
Look.
Go ahead, what's your question, please?
My question concerns, you know, you blame it on the white man on how we came over and take your land. I don't understand when the Japanese are coming over and they're buying it, and that's okay. I don't see what this is about the Howleys coming over. You come over to our country and buy up our land too. You know, it works both ways. I don't see how you can have this rallies and everything against the white man. This is America, you know.
Let me just say something to this call. This is not America. This is Polynesia. Our country was stolen. That's one of your problems. You're ignorant, woefully ignorant. I am very active against Japanese ownership of our land. I have testified repeatedly at various commissions and at the legislature in opposition to any foreigner owning Hawaiian land. But you, caller, need to learn about Hawaiian history and about where you are. And that attitude that you have is the same attitude that Joey Carter has. You think you are in America. You are not in America. You are in a colony that is in Polynesia that was forcibly taken, just as, I might add, all of Eastern Europe was forcibly taken by the Soviet Union, which Americans think is a very, very bad place. The bad, bad Soviet Union. Well, the bad, bad United States of America took Puerto Rico, it took Alaska, it stole Indian land, it took Hawaii, it took Guam, it took Micronesia, Palau, and you had better learn that history because you are the recipient of an imperialist tradition.
500 years we have had to fight and resist and struggle against the oppressor who has come. They called us Indians and said that we didn't have any rights. They called us Indians and said that we were no longer people. They called us Indians and they used their manifest destiny mentality to justify their genocide against us.
In the 1960s, the FBI launched what it called the COINTELPRO program, the counterintelligence program. And essentially it was a program within the FBI to infiltrate the civil rights movement and to destroy it from within and from without. In the late 60s, very early 70s, when activists within the Indian community started vocalizing their situation with regard to deprivations of human and civil rights, the FBI shifted or used the same basic tactics to go after AIM.
I have to ask you this, since it's Columbus Day, does that mean anything to you as a Native person?
I mean, with no disrespect to anyone, I think asking Native people to celebrate Columbus Day is kind of like asking the American people to celebrate Osama bin Laden Day. And I actually think that terrorism arrived on this hemisphere with Columbus because for us as Native people, the experience that we had was, you know, I mean, how did my land become somebody else's country?
Our request for political asylum is built upon the reality that America is still conducting its genocidal war against the Indian people. Our request for political asylum is based on the reality that you cannot embarrass the American government. You cannot embarrass something that is built and based on greed, violence, and corruption. It cannot be done.
We have never really seen the war go away. I mean, if you're dying from the 7th Cavalry's bullets, or if you're dying from induced poverty and racism and class systems and sex systems, all right, and you're dying from alcoholism and poverty, all right, or someone has come in now in the name of maximizing their profit, and they're getting you to work in the mines, the uranium mines, and you're dying from lung cancer, and you're dying from the cancers and the diseases that come out of that. You're dying. It's the same as the bullet killing you, and I see it all as a war. You know, like I've heard a lot of people talk about the theoretical nuclear war. What if it ever comes? Well, you know, let's alter our perspective on that a little bit and say, well, the nuclear war is here. That's what that dead Navajo uranium miner is. He's a victim of that war. That's what them stillbirths are that came out of 3 Mile Island. That's what the miscarriages and the stillbirths are in Pine Ridge, where the radioactivity's reached into the water.
The nuclear war that is being waged against the people on the Western Hemisphere does not just happen and occur after the uranium has been made into plutonium. It occurs and it begins the day that one of the corporate terrorists decides, well, we're going to take the uranium from these Indians over here. And then in order to get the land, to get the uranium from under our land, and in order to maximize their profit at the same time, while they are doing this, they use their law enforcement agencies, such as the FBI. They use them as a private standing army for the corporate state, and the FBI comes into our communities and they attack us while they're calling us criminals. And then after they have broken down and they have put our people into the prisons and they have killed our most vocal people, and they have driven our people underground, while they have used the taxpayers, while the corporate state uses the taxpayers' dollars to send its private army to attack us. Then when the resistance is beaten down enough, then the corporate state comes in and makes deals with the federal government, and they walk away with all the resources at a very cheap price, because their entire war against us was waged and subsidized by the American people under the name of law and order. So they get it for nothing, and then they turn it around and sell it back to the American people. That is the principle behind maximizing the profit. It is the principle behind colonization.
You know, and it's not just the U.S., it's Western civilization. France, England, Germany, they're not, you know, they're not immune to this. They're just as, in their technologic, civilized mindset, they're just as dangerous as the U.S. They're the parents of the Americans. America's their child, so they cannot remove themselves from responsibility for the behavior of their child. So it's not just the U.S. Everyone likes to point it at the U.S. You know, and that's what makes the other countries so dangerous, because they want to pretend it's not them. The United States isn't the only one that has enslaved its citizens as workers. You know, the United States isn't the only one that's feeding off of the mass of the people, and the United States didn't create the idea. It came from here. In the end, what allows this aggressive behavior to continue is the participation of the citizens of the democracies. You know, they'll turn around and they'll condemn the violence of their governments or other systems, but yet they, you know, they'll live off of the fruits of it.
Power is something that emanates from us, from the human being. Human physical being, spirit. And power is about that spirit, about the being, and our relationship to the planet, to the earth, to the universe. This is where our real power connections are. We live in a time where we have been indoctrinated to believe that authority is power. So when we look externally and we see these ones that would feed off of us and control us, they have defined power from the material perception of the human, not of the being. So we look at economic systems as being power, but in reality an economic system is basically a system of authority. And we look at military systems as being power, but in reality that's another system of authority. Or religious systems, but these are systems of authority. But we have been programmed into believing that these things are power, and because we have really no influence in these things, no real accessibility to these things, and if we believe they have the power, then it doesn't say much for ourselves. So power really is about our relationship to life. See, maybe we should be developing our loyalty to this planet and this earth and our future, our descendants, more than we should be to governing political systems that have created all these problems. See, but now most people are trying to find solutions to the problems, but they're trying to do it within the confines of the confined abstractions of democracy. And so if they're not willing to think objectively about our responsibilities towards our own descendants, then they will come up with no solutions. They will only perpetuate the enslavement and feeding.
I mean, for goodness sakes, this is the 21st century. You know, we got to get over what happened 50, 100, 200 years ago. And let's make money for everybody. That's the best way to try to create some new energy and some new growth in Africa. So,
when democracy equals empire, get a dictionary, open it to democracy. It says noun, Greek, demokratia, demos, people, and kratos, strength or power. That form of government in which the supreme power rests with the people. Every American president, whether Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, speaks lovingly of democracy whenever the nation engages in some escapade abroad. When the U.S. invaded Iraq, it did so ostensibly to bring democracy to the Middle East. When it launches a raid in Grenada or rains death on a poor neighborhood in Panama, when it invaded Haiti in the last century ad infinitum, it always did so in the name of restoring democracy. What is this democracy of which they so blithely speak? We all have heard the term since our infancy, but who really knows what it means? I wanted to learn more about it, so I began to read one of the finest historians I know of, the great C.L.R. James, author of the groundbreaking The Black Jacobins, an influential study of the Haitian Revolution. Some years ago, James published a pamphlet titled Every Cook Can Govern, a study of democracy in ancient Greece. I found myself, as I often am when I read his stuff, blown away by what I learned. As his subtitle suggests, James looks at Greek history for the roots of the democratic idea and finds it, in some stages, truly democratic in ways we can hardly imagine. He writes, perhaps the most striking thing about Greek democracy was that the administration, and there were immense administrative problems, was organized upon the basis of what is known as sortition, or more easily, selection by lot. The vast majority of Greek officials were chosen by a method which amounted to putting names into a hat and appointing the ones whose names came out. Now, the average C10 bureaucrat or labor member of parliament in Britain would fall in a fit if it were suggested to him that any worker selected at random could do the work he is doing. But that was precisely the guiding principle of Greek democracy. And this form of government is the government under which flourished the greatest civilization the world has ever known, he wrote. C.L.R. James, a revolutionary activist as well as a stellar historian, explains that in Greek, the term demokratia could be used interchangeably with the word isonomia, which meant equality. Using this system, the Greek city-state decided issues of war and peace, of taxation, of cultural affairs, and virtually every important affair of state. They were so conscious of the seduction of power, and they so opposed tyranny, that a man who, and yes, they tended to only allow the franchise to men, held public office could not serve again as a general rule. Their service was also subject to a time limit. Some historians have quite rightly noted that the Greek democracy rested upon slavery. That is true. But James tells us it was a slavery that enrages notorious snobs like Plato, who had trouble identifying who was slave and who was free. And he resented the fact that slaves would not clear the street when he walked upon it. The Greeks, James notes, tried representative democracy and rejected it out of hand. What worked for them was direct democracy, which means that they believed that all were capable of governing the society in which they lived. The very fact that such an idea surprises us tells us how far this era has drifted from fundamental notions of democracy. In ancient Greece, the citizen was seen as an able, trusted element of the state. In the present era, the citizen is virtually superfluous. He is a tax source. She is one who obeys her leaders. He is a dispensable cog in the wheel, whose only real duty is to do what one is told. Consider the mass demonstrations of spring 2003, when millions took to the streets of Washington, London, and San Francisco, demanding that there be no war in Iraq. Here, in the alleged democracies of England and the U.S., governments ignored the people and engaged in imperial war on a lie. In ancient Greece, some 2,500 years ago, this wouldn't have been allowed. We don't live in a democracy. We live under the rule of a few. We live in an empire. From death row, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
People really don't understand what the climate was in Philadelphia in the years before Mumia was arrested. Because if they did, they would look at his arrest and his trial in a different fashion.
In 1982, Philadelphia journalist Mumia Abu Jamal was convicted of first-degree murder in the killing of police officer Daniel Faulkner. On the July 4th weekend, he was sentenced to death. In 2001, federal court judge William Yan overturned Abu Jamal's death sentence as illegally imposed and unconstitutional. Yet Abu Jamal remained on death row for more than 10 years while the Philadelphia District Attorney continued to pursue his execution. In 2011, the DA's office conceded defeat, and after 30 years on death row, Abu Jamal was transferred from solitary confinement and joined the general prison population, where he continues his appeals. Mumia Abu Jamal has said numerous times, "My only crime that night is that I survived." In fact, the effort to legally execute Abu Jamal has only recently ended, but the first attempt to kill him may have been made on that fateful night of December 9, 1981. Abu Jamal was also critically wounded, shot through the chest, and found near the prone body of Daniel Faulkner. And the evidence that convicted him for the murder, well, it doesn't exist. It's been well established over the years that Abu Jamal's trial was patently unjust. For instance, the Philadelphia DA trained prosecutors to exclude blacks from juries. In Abu Jamal's case, 11 out of the 15 preemptory strikes were made to bar blacks from his jury. What this short film will document is how countless due process violations began just moments after the shooting of Daniel Faulkner and Mumia Abu Jamal, when members of the Philadelphia Police Department began to manufacture Abu Jamal's guilt and, perhaps more importantly, conceal his innocence. In the culture wars that have punted Mumia the effigy back and forth across ideological fields of politics, race, and class, the attempt has been made to diminish the relevance of Abu Jamal as a journalist in 1981. But this man, who was elected president of the Philadelphia chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, was already well known throughout the city as a fiercely independent up-and-coming journalist. In fact, by the age of 15, the FBI was tracking the young writer for the Black Panther Party through their draconian and illegal program known as COINTELPRO, not for violent behavior, but because of his, quote, inclination to appear and speak at public gatherings. Also, in 1981, he was well known to the Philadelphia Police Department as an outspoken journalist who reported on police corruption and brutality, in particular with regard to the Philly PD's hostile relationship with the controversial MOVE organization, culminating in a year-long police siege of the MOVE House that ended in 1978 with the shooting death of police officer James Ramp. 9 members of MOVE were charged with the murder, and during his coverage of the trial, Abu Jamal strongly criticized the actions of the police and the prosecution, including the implication that the officer was most likely killed by police crossfire. The MOVE trial concluded just a year and a half before Abu Jamal and Faulkner were found shot on that fateful night. And it was only 4 months from the federal trial of MOVE leader John Africa, whose acquittal on gun charges left the police and DA's office infuriated.
When they saw who they had, that was number one. I mean, wow, look what we done ran into. We got a Panther, and we're gonna kill this Panther. We're gonna kill this nigga here, right here.
Fred Hampton, a 21-year-old civil rights powerhouse, was murdered in his home in front of his pregnant fiancée. According to sources, on the morning of December 4th, 1969, a joint police and FBI coordinated raid on his home ended in his death. Hampton's fiancée, Deborah Jones, who was 8 months pregnant with his son, was sleeping in bed next to him when the police attacked. They began shooting into the apartment and into the bedroom where they were sleeping. The police raiders were officially carrying out a search warrant, looking for weapons. According to sources, they did not arrive at 8 p.m. the night before when they knew the apartment was empty, but instead when they knew Hampton and more Panthers would be present.
At the contrary. There's no terrorist organization, there's no communist country, there's no jihadists or anybody else who has a record like the U.S. has in terms of imperial violence. So to focus on the Panthers and say they're violent, it's kind of ridiculous.
We expected about 20 Panthers to be in the apartment when the police raided the place.
Only 2 of those black nigger fuckers were killed, Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. FBI Special Agent Greg York.
Following the attack, the police publicly claimed to have been under heavy fire from the Panthers, and that Panthers had first fired on them through the front door. The actual evidence at the scene proved otherwise, and Chicago Panthers and other supporters quickly mobilized to expose the police lies. There were no police injured during the raid, and the police fired nearly 100 rounds into the apartment. Also, strong evidence emerged later that a paid FBI informant had given Hampton a sedative that prevented him from waking up. In 2 separate tests that were part of the same autopsy, a high dose of barbiturate seconal was found, enough to make Hampton unconscious or very drowsy. Reports say that his wife Deborah Johnson heard one of the officers ask, "Is he still alive?" After 2 gunshots were fired inside the room, the officer said, "He's good and dead now." An autopsy performed on Hampton by a doctor confirmed Deborah Johnson's account about Hampton being shot twice after she was forced out of the bedroom. COINTELPRO, an acronym for the FBI's top secret and illegal counterintelligence program. The program became public after unknown anti-war activists broke into FBI headquarters in Medea, Pennsylvania in 1971. The activists discovered explosive documents that revealed an FBI war on civil rights and black liberation movements. Among these liberated files was a March 3, 1968 COINTELPRO memo discussing the urgent need to prevent, and quote, "the beginning of a true black revolution," end quote. One specific tactical approach was expressed in an April 3, 1968 communication that said, and quote, "The Negro youth and moderates must be made to understand that if they succumb to revolutionary teaching, they will be dead revolutionaries," end quote.
You couldn't have business with Black Panthers. Black Panthers were definitely going to be heard.
So we always say in the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that. You're going to have to say that I am a proletarian. I am the people. I'm not the pig. You got to make a distinction. And the people are going to have to attack the pigs. The people are going to have to stand up against the pigs. That's what the Panthers are doing. That's what the Panthers are doing all over the world.
As World War II came to a close, African-American veterans and citizens recognized the contradiction of fighting for democracy abroad while fundamental civil rights were denied at home. A flurry of federal decrees and court challenges began undermining what had been a century-old foundation of white supremacy. Perhaps most significant of these was the landmark 1954 Brown v. Board of Education decision outlawing segregated schools. Born in 1941, Emmett Till was raised in Chicago by his mother, Mamie. Emmett's father, Lewis, was killed in combat in 1945. Although he spent his youth in Chicago, Emmett and Mamie kept in contact with relatives in Mississippi. In 1955, the day before her son is to leave for a summer stay with a family in Mississippi, Mamie Till gave Emmett the ring once owned by his father, Lewis Till, inscribed with the letters L.T. In late August 1955, Emmett Till arrived in Money, Mississippi, and went to stay at the home of his great-uncle Moses Wright. Soon after his arrival, Emmett joined a group of teenagers, 7 boys and 1 girl, and went to Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market for refreshments to cool off after a long day of picking cotton in the hot sun. Bryant's Grocery, owned by a white couple, Roy and Carolyn Bryant, sold supplies and candy to a primarily black clientele of sharecroppers and their children. Emmett went into the store to buy bubble gum. Some of the kids outside the store said they heard Emmett brag about having a white girlfriend back in Chicago, and also that he said, "Bye, baby," to Carolyn Bryant. A few days later, Roy Bryant, Carolyn's husband, and his half-brother J.W. Milam kidnapped Emmett Till from Moses Wright's home. They brutally beat him, taking him to the edge of the Tallahatchie River, shooting him in the head, fastening a large metal fan used for ginning cotton to his neck with barbed wire, and pushing the body into the river. Once Emmett was reported missing by Moses Wright, J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant were arrested on kidnapping charges in Leflore County. 3 days later, Emmett Till's decomposed corpse was pulled from Mississippi's Tallahatchie River. Moses Wright identified the body from the ring with the initials LT. Mississippi Governor Hugh White ordered local officials to fully prosecute Milam and Bryant in the Till case. At the time, the murder left an indelible mark on the African American community, especially for those boys who were around the same age as Emmett Till. Reginald Lindsay, today a judge, remembers what it meant to him as a young boy growing up in Birmingham, Alabama. The mantra that was repeated to me, and I dare say to other boys my age, nearly every time I left my neighborhood after August 1955 to go to a place where it was likely that I would encounter white people was, be careful how you talk to white women, you don't want to end up like Emmett Till. While the experience reinforced the fear Lindsay and other young African Americans had in their dealings with whites in the South, Till's death also set a much larger force in motion. Ordinary citizens on the ground answered that question in the most affirming way. It began with Mamie Till's courageous decision to have an open casket burial so the entire world could see what happened to her son. It continued with the civil rights activists who used the murder and trial of Emmett Till as a rallying cry for greater action. The Montgomery bus boycotts and the Little Rock Seven followed closely on the heels of the case. The kidnapping and murder trial of J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant opened in Sumner, Mississippi, the county seat of Tallahatchie County. Jury selection resulted in an all-white 12-man jury made up of 9 farmers, 2 carpenters, and 1 insurance agent. During the trial, Moses Wright, Emmett Till's great-uncle, did the unthinkable. He accused 2 white men in open court. While on the witness stand, he stood up and pointed his finger at Milam and Bryant, accusing them of coming to his house and kidnapping Emmett. Despite this testimony and other evidence presented at the trial, Milam and Bryant were acquitted of murdering Emmett Till. After the jury deliberated for 67 minutes. One juror told a reporter that they wouldn't have taken so long if they hadn't stopped to drink pop. Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam stood before photographers, lighting up cigars and kissing their wives in celebration of their acquittal. Moses Wright and another poor black Mississippian who testified, Willie Reed, were smuggled to Chicago. Once there, Reed collapsed and suffered a nervous breakdown. Just 3 years later, Look magazine published an article written by Alabama journalist William Bradford Huey, entitled The Shocking Story of a Proved Killing in Mississippi. Huey offered Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam $4,000 to tell how they killed Emmett Till. Milam agreed and told their story for the record. Mamie Till Mobley died of heart failure at age 81. Her death came just 2 weeks before the murder of Emmett Till was to premiere nationally on PBS.
I am everyone who ever died without a voice, or a prayer, or a hope, or a chance.
Leonard Peltier is a Native American activist who's been in prison for 40 years, serving 2 consecutive life terms for a crime he maintains he did not commit. In 1977, he was convicted of killing 2 FBI agents, Ronald Williams and Jack Kohler, during a shootout on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Peltier was a member of the American Indian Movement, AIM, founded in 1968 during the Civil Rights Movement to advocate for the rights of Native Americans. The murders occurred at a time when AIM supporters and residents of Pine Ridge were being intimidated and killed, allegedly by paramilitaries connected to the government. A climate of fear and terror prevailed. After 2 AIM members were acquitted of the killings, witnesses were coerced by the FBI into saying they saw Peltier shoot the agents. Ballistics evidence that could have aided Leonard's defense was hidden from his lawyers.
The only thing I'm guilty of is struggling for my people. I didn't kill those agents.
It was not a fair trial. The conclusion reached by federal appeals judge Gerald Heaney, who stated, "The prosecution withheld evidence favorable to the defendant, and the FBI used improper tactics in extraditing Peltier and otherwise in investigating and trying Peltier's case."
I'll be an old man when I get out. If I get out.
Leonard Peltier has spent 40 years in federal penitentiaries, often in solitary confinement. He's now 71 years old and in rapidly declining health. There are concerns that he's not receiving adequate medical treatment and his condition could be fatal.
They're giving him the death penalty by leaving him in that type of an environment. The man needs medical treatment. He needs to have access to medical treatment. If they're not going to give medical treatment to him, they need to release him as soon as possible.
Amnesty International is calling on President Obama to grant Leonard Peltier clemency before it's too late. President Obama has a chance to rectify a case that has troubled many people for decades. It's an appeal supported by 7 of the president's fellow Nobel Peace Prize laureates, including the late Nelson Mandela, and dozens of religious and human rights leaders from the U.S. and around the world.
There are many governments, business interests, even religious leaders that would like to see me depart this earth. I'll grant them their wish soon enough. But before I do, I wish to make a small contribution, a final gesture of goodwill to the people of this little planet that have given, from whom I have taken so much.
The war against us all. This war in Iraq isn't the end, it's the beginning of wars to come, all around the world, at the whim of the neocons in the White House. This is the Bush doctrine come to life. War, war, and more war. War brought to you by the big corporate masters who run the show. This isn't just a war on Iraqis or Afghanis, or even Arabs or Muslims. It is ultimately a war on us all. That's because the billions and billions of dollars that are being spent on this war, the cost of tanks, rocketry, bullets, and yes, even salaries for the 125,000 plus troops, is money that will never be spent on education, on health care, on the reconstruction of crumbling public housing, or to train and place the millions of workers who have lost manufacturing jobs in the past 3 years alone. The war in Iraq is, in reality, a war against the nation's workers and the poor, who are getting less and less, while the big defense industries are making a killing, literally. What's next? Iran? Syria? North Korea? Venezuela? We've already seen the corporate media play megaphone to the White House to build and promote a war based on lies. War is utilized by the imperialists first and foremost to crush internal enemies. We're seeing the truth of his insight when we see the sad state of American education, the rush of seniors to buy affordable medications from the Canadians because American drugs are just too expensive, the threatened privatization of Social Security, and the wave of repression that comes with an increasingly militarized police. This is a war on all of us. And the struggle against war is really a struggle for a better life for the millions of folks who are in need here in this country. The fight against the war is really to fight for your own interests, not the false interests of the defense industries or the corporate media or the White House. Down with the wars for empire. From death row, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
I mean, for goodness sakes, this is the 21st century. You know, we got to get over what happened 50, 100, 200 years ago. And let's make money for everybody.
I did talk about the founding fathers as, you know, and I live in the state of South Dakota, right? And I grew up there.
Yep.
And I see Mount Rushmore.
Mhm.
You know, the 4 founding fathers, one of them anyway.
Right. Yep.
Jefferson, Washington, Lincoln, and what's the other one? Roosevelt,
Right.
modern day founding father.
Right.
Well, each of them we can name, we teach our children. It's like, okay, George Washington, he's the village burner. He ordered his army, Continental Congress Army, to go and kill every Indian that has a village up and along the Missouri or the Mohawk River, and in the state of New York in this area. Any native, and you put a bounty out on them, and you give them, you know, the males the bigger bounty, and if you get them, bring the skins here. And we go on and on and on. Jefferson also called Hunt Him Down Like the Wolf. He excluded Native people as he was writing, stealing the words from the Iroquois people. Teddy Roosevelt nationalized over 52 million acres to make national parks, and he took those away from reservations in the early part of the 1900s.
Something that belongs to the people, and Trump said that. This revolution is about you. You are what empowers it. You are the future, and we're going to get out of your way and let you have your destiny, have your dreams. And we understand America's special in that destiny, and that as America goes, the rest of the world goes. Washington envisioned all of this in his farewell address. He saw all this in Providence, in a vision, and now it's all come true. The enemy knew that, so that's why they always invoke the occult. Don't talk about God or Christ. Don't talk about Providence. Don't say, you know, America's great and all this stuff, to demoralize us not to have this birthright, this birthright, this birthright, this birthright.
Who's left? Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation the same day he signed this country's largest mass execution of 38 Dakota men for supposedly stealing a cow that wandered onto their given reservation boundaries. And then the Dakota said, "Oh, we're sorry, we didn't know, it didn't have a brand, and we thought it was on our own. We were hungry, we were starving at the time." So the Native people gathered about 40 other skinny cattle as well, and gave it to the one farmer. That one farmer wanted justice. He says, "I want the man. I don't want the cows." So all of them said, "I am guilty." So the army came down, and that's when that sort of war came along. And in the end, over 500 were indicted. So Lincoln signed, well, let's only hang 38 of them. They all hung at the same time in Mankato, Minnesota.
They were shackled and chained together. They had hoods on them. The women began wailing and weeping. One of the prisoners in a loud voice said, "Namach umpo metakwepi, hear me, my people. Today is not a day of defeat. It is a day of victory. For we have made our peace with our Creator and now go to be with Him forever. Remember this day to tell our children so they can tell their children that we are people who died a noble death. Do not mourn for us. Rejoice with us. It's a good day to God." And then he lifted up his voice and began singing.
These are, you know, the ideas that people are holding up as, well, forget about what we did to the Indians or the Native people. Let's hold what this freedom and caring for loving our fellow men is based upon.
This birthright.
But let's not talk about the tree roots people. Let's talk about what we can change as far as grassroots movements is concerned.
This birthright.
We're not concerned about having the graveyard still under the U.S. Capitol building with the Lenape bones, the graveyard still on that hill of where the U.S. Capitol building. Let's not talk about that.
This was a burial mound sacred to the Indians.
It's still there. It's proven. It's still there. So if people want proof, anything I say can be picked up in a book.
This birthright.
Because we're losing a lot of people because of the internet. And we have to do something. We have to go see Bill Gates and a lot of different people that really understand what's happening. We have to talk to them, maybe in certain areas, closing that internet up in some way. Somebody will say, "Oh, freedom of speech, freedom of speech." These are foolish people. We have a lot of foolish people. We have a lot of foolish people. We've got to maybe do something with the internet because they are recruiting by the thousands.
Mr. Neville, you and your people, you talk about reparations. The reparations that you talk about, Mr. Neville, your people already got your reparations. Your reparations came in the form of a man named Barack Obama.
Please hold your response.
My advice to you, if you don't like it here in America, planes leave every hour from Tampa Airport. Go back to Africa. Go back to Africa. Go back.
You think you live in a free country, when statistically, this is the most violent country on earth. More violent than the two other countries that come close, Scotland and Australia. And it's more than twice more violent than either one of those countries. That is a statistical fact. So I don't go for the facades, man. I don't go for the Orwellian reality. I've only two concerns in my life: racism and freedom. I want to see freedom for my people in my lifetime, somewhere in the Western Hemisphere, whether it's in the Northwest Territories of Canada or somewhere high in the Andes. My people are going to be free. And we're going to stop Denver from celebrating Columbus. And we're going to stop Denver from celebrating Indian killers. You know, we're going to stop the United States of America from naming, dehumanizing names, and employing and paying caricatures. Columbus has to die. After 500 years, kill him! Kill Columbus! His legacy still lives. Columbus has to die. You know, it's because of Columbus that we are primitives. Well, let me tell you, I am a born-again primitive, and I am proud. And I am a born-again primitive. His legacy, that we are not human beings. You know, it wasn't until 1898, less than a century ago, the Pope declared us to be human beings. 1898. And he's coming to Denver. I'm going to be here. And if the Pope, and if you all don't kill Columbus, I'm going to make sure the Pope kills Columbus when he gets here. And if he doesn't, he's going to remember his visit. And the world will remember his visit. Like how the Maoris greeted Queen Elizabeth 2 years ago. The world found out. I think you guys were kept in the dark, but the rest of the world found out how the Maoris felt about the Queen of England and Columbus. Imagine the only color of the human race, the red Indians of the Western Hemisphere, were the only color of the human race not allowed to participate in the international community. That's why Columbus has to die. No one talks about majority rule in the 5 countries where we are majority. Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Panama, Colombia, Canada. Ostensibly in Canada because 90% of the non-Indians live within 100 miles of the U.S. border. And guess who lives in the north? And we control it. Canada found that out last year. The Oka crisis that you were kept from. When the Canadian Armed Forces employed more soldiers to surround 50 men, women, and children, Indians, than they sent to Saudi Arabia in the Gulf War.
That's how serious the indigenous threat to industrial America is, and the Orwellian reality that you are now a part of. It's unacceptable that the legacy of Columbus keeps my people from sitting at the table of the international family of nations when all the rest of the sacred colors of the human race are there. Black, brown, yellow, white. We're missing. In 1900, they estimated there were approximately 250,000 Indians left in the continental United States and Alaska. 99.9% of that 250,000 were traditional Indian people. Now, according to the U.S. Census, who defines us by blood quantum, only 2 other countries in the world do that. One is past, Nazi Germany and South Africa. They say there are approximately 2 million Indians left in America, and there are less than 400,000 on the Indian reservation. Of those 400,000, there's less than 30,000 that are traditional Indian people. So the genocide is almost complete. In 92 years, we've went from 250,000 to less than 30,000. It's unacceptable. That is the Columbus legacy. To celebrate the first transatlantic slave trader is beyond me. Where are the black people, my allies? I was on the Poor People's March, man. I've been there in Washington, D.C. with you all. Where are my black brothers and sisters on this question? Columbus was the first transatlantic slave trader. But it was us, man, it was us. And this country and this city has the gall to celebrate it. And everyone knows he was a half a world off course. I mean, that's buffoonery, man. You can't be more off course than a half of a world. How can you celebrate a clown like that, man? How can anybody be proud that he's a hero of questionable ancestry? Because the Portuguese, who employed him first as a slave trader up and down the West African coast, that alone, I should be marching with thousands of black brothers and sisters on Columbus Day. Where's our allies, man? Where's the Catholics? Huh? Where's the Mormons? Huh? Where's corporate America, whose land they're getting rich off of? Can't they say thank you? And say no more Columbus Day, no more Redskins, no more Braves, no more Indians riding a spotted pony around a football stadium dressed in my ancestral heritage? Stanford and Dartmouth, to name a few, along with University of Oklahoma, got rid of their names and their mascots. After I sued the Cleveland Indians baseball team for their racist, dehumanizing, derogatory symbol Chief Wahoo in 1971. You don't think that's an issue, Andy Rooney? Andy Rooney doesn't think that's the issue. The only time I have ever received hate mail was when I sued the Cleveland Indians baseball team for racism. I didn't even get hate mail from the leftists when I fought against the Sandinistas, man. But I got hate mail from the sports lovers of America. The ones that fill the stadiums, man. Now I know the 4 sacred colors that are primary. All colors are sacred. But in the Lakota way of life, we have 4 primary colors. black, red, yellow, and white. They represent the 4 quarters of the universe, the 4 winds, the 4 points, the 4 seasons, the 4 ages of the world, the 4 ages of the human being. Those colors represent medicine, health, well-being, spirituality. You mix those 4 colors together, black, red, yellow, and white, and you get the color brown, the color of our grandmother, the earth. I have respect. I have respect because I know that I wasn't born in sin. I'm not a born liar. You understand? My children are not born liars, and neither are you. You're not born in sin. I don't care what anybody tells you or what you believe. You're a good human being with feelings. And every damn one of us have feelings, man. And that's what makes us human beings and part of the family. You know? The hawks and the eagles don't integrate, but they have respect. The hawk flies lower and stirs up the world beneath it so the eagle can see a little bit better. The black widow spider has respect for daddy long legs, and they get along. The rattlesnake for the garter snake. The birch tree for the evergreen. And you go on and on throughout life and you find out that female-male balance. But you understand that we are no different than they are. And you understand that we're all born with feelings, man. The same feelings, the same pain, the same joy. So again, in the words of Chief Seattle, tribe follows tribe and nation follows nation. It's like the waves of the sea. It's the order of nature, and regret is useless. Your time of decay may be distant, but it will surely come. For even the white man's God who walked and talked with him as friend with friend could not escape our common destiny.
This term, Negro, demoralizes us and is it detrimental. I feel it doesn't give us any association past the slave ship.
This curious word, Negro, was seldom or never used in Africa itself. And this word has no meaning, or no worthwhile meaning at all, in Africa. I would doubt myself if it has any useful meaning anywhere else.
What is a Negro? In Africa, the word Negro has no meaning. In Brazil, a Negro is a man who's very poor and very black. And in the United States, a man who has any quantity of Negro blood, or whatever that is considered a Negro.
Are Negroes a race, a people, or a condition? Everywhere we have looked, we have seen Negroes as savage and barbaric, humble and self-sacrificing, scared and childish and inferior. And I remember as a kid coming from some of the pictures, and we spent the whole time from the motion picture house to home satirizing the Negro performances we saw in the film. Well, it was also an admission that somehow or other this was, to some degree, what we were. Now, these important and very, very impressionistic things that we got from these films did, to some degree, govern our behavior.
Oh, yes, you know, that wish I was white kind of thing, when you begin to sort of get the feeling of difference, like maybe you're dirty, something's wrong. But there was that feeling, you know, so early you can't even remember where it started.
No, I'm not over it yet. It's part of my American heritage.
Quale è cattiva? Qual è buona?
Lei.
Perché è buona?
Perché ha gli occhi celesti.
Quale è cattiva? Perché è cattiva?
Perché è tutto nero.
E qual è la bambola che ti somiglia di più?
Told that our past was barbarism and the white man our redeemer. Slavery was a sin, but salvation. Few of us had anything to look forward to. We were afraid to look back.
Hey, look, honey, we're going to the theater. We're not going to be in it, you know.
George, I don't like that. Do you expect this boy to go out with you looking like that? Well, now, that's up to George, if he's ashamed of his heritage.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Here we go again. A lecture on our African past, on our great West African heritage.
I don't preach slavery. I preach Jesus' liberation.
In 1 second, you know, we're going to hear all about the great Ashanti empires, the Songhai civilizations, the sculpture of Benin, some poems in the Bantu, and then the whole monologue is going to end up with the word heritage.
Jesus' liberation.
Let's face it, baby, your heritage ain't nothing but a bunch of raggedy spirituals in some grass huts.
Grass huts? Oh, you see, George, you think you would rather stand there in your splendid ignorance and know absolutely nothing about the people who were the first to smelt iron on the face of this earth while the Ashantis were performing surgical operations when the English were still tattooing themselves with blue dragons.
In the period when the Europeans had to justify the exploitation of Africa and the demeaning of a whole people, they systematically started the effort to read the African out of human history.
It still sits upon the belief, perfectly unscientific, quite unbased in any scholarly discipline, that the Africans, that is to say, if you like, the Negroes, are people of some sort of inferiority to others and therefore have not been able to develop in the same way.
Can you show me the doll that you like best or that you'd like to play with?
This one. I like that one.
I'm killing.
This one.
That one?
Now, you know the great myth of the colonial era. The great myth took the shape of saying that the Africans, the Negroes, are children, and because they are children, it said, failing to develop, we, the Europeans, you, the Americans, must go in there and show them the way they should go, civilize them, introduce them to the blessings of orderly life.
And can you show me the doll that is the nice doll? And can you give, and why does that look bad?
Because it's black.
And can you give me the doll that looks like you?
Europe was amazed at the discovery that Africans could perform such an impressive creation of bronze casting. African sculpture burst upon the European art world. It became a major influence in the modern movement. Picasso, Braque, Modigliani, Leger, Deron, found in African sculpture a freedom and a vitality they had been searching for. Here was no slavish imitation of nature, something the camera could do better, but a new and fresh way of looking at the world behind the appearance.
This demeaning of our culture and this reading us out of the commentary of human history has left deep psychological scars.
And why is that the nice doll?
He's white.
And can you show me the doll that looks bad? And why do you think that's a nice doll?
Because she's white.
What we are trying to do now is a massive job of rebuilding the inside, the spirits, the hopes, the history, the culture of a people.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land, 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 in his own land.
We're trying to restore those values that have been taken away, and we're trying to get across to black youth that they have a part to play in the making of a new world. They have the imagination, they have the energy. You must first restore that part of yourself that has been negated by oppression. It is as essential to you as bread and water. It is part of the food that must feed your spirit in the world of tomorrow, and it is part of what you will have to transfer to your children.
I don't preach slavery. I preach Jesus liberation, Jesus liberation, Jesus liberation, Jesus liberation, Jesus liberation, Jesus liberation.
The Aborigines were deemed to be subhuman, little more than animals, which was to justify not only the theft of their land, but their extermination. An edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, still in circulation when I was at school, described them as only an animal of prey, more ferocious than the leopard or the hyena. He devours his own species. So they were hunted and raped and massacred. And few doubted at the time that genocide was official policy. A government report in the 1850s spoke of the success of poisoning Aborigines, 100 of them laid out at a time. But until quite recently, little of this was even acknowledged. In Tasmania, the Aborigines were said to have died out. In fact, they were hunted along with kangaroos and almost wiped out. In New South Wales, by 1845, the tribe who had watched Captain Cook sail here into Botany Bay was reduced to 3 women and a man. In Victoria, an Aborigine called Old Mr. Burt recalled this story told by his mother.
They buried our babies with only their heads above the ground. All in a row they were. Then they had a test to see who could kick the babies' heads off the furthest. One man clobbered a baby's head off from horseback. They then spent most of the day raping the women. Most of them were then tortured to death by sticking sharp things like spears up their vaginas until they died. They tied the men's hands behind their backs, then cut off their penis and testicles, and watched them run around screaming until they died.
One of the most enduring myths about the Aborigines is that they did not fight back. In fact, the war of resistance lasted more than a century, some of it here on the banks of the Hawkesbury River, north of Sydney. During the 1930s, my father built a cottage here, on the beach at an Aboriginal place called Patonga. I think we knew that somebody had lived at Patonga at some time, but no one talked about it. In fact, an entire nation had lived here on and off for thousands of years. They were called the Jurag, a unique Aboriginal people, tall and slender, whose country extended to a 40-mile radius north of Sydney, and the mighty Hawkesbury River was theirs. And when the British established the town of Windsor in the early 1800s, a great war began. This war was not recorded in the Imperial Chronicles of Australia. Growing up here, I knew nothing about it, and I suspect that's still true of the people in the smart beach houses here today. And yet the Jurag inflicted on the British a casualty rate greater than that sustained by the Australian Armed Forces during all of World War II. And finally, after 22 years, outnumbered and without guns, they went down fighting to the last man, woman and child, a complete nation. Today, in a land of many cenotaphs and war memorials on which invariably is written, "Lest we forget," not one of them stands for those who fought and fell in their own country. By the 1920s, the British invasion had caused the deaths of at least 250,000 black Australians. Genocide on a massive scale. But this fact remained suppressed, except in the living memory of those who survived. Here in the Northern Territory, in the great isolated heartland of Australia, the killing of Aborigines continued well into the 20th century, and most of these also remained secret. However, in 1928, 150 miles from Alice Springs, a gang of police and cattlemen massacred at least 50 Aborigines, perhaps many more, and word got out. A public inquiry was held, and its findings were summarized in these 3 words: the shooting was justified.
Hi, this is Lati. And I'm Kiris. Kiris is our memorial for our Native American Indian genocide.
fucking illegal. You're all illegal. You're all illegal. We didn't invite none of you here. We're the only Native Americans here. That's right. We're the only Native Americans here. You're all illegal. We didn't invite none of you.
Exactly.
We didn't invite none of you.
Exactly.
Get on. Get on. Get on with your bogus arguments. Get on with your bogus arguments. We're the only legal ones here.
We have Native Americans here.
Yeah. We should have put that sign up when you son of a bitches came. Yeah, that's right. It represents blood. That represents blood spilled by Native Americans protecting this land from the invaders. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You don't want to hear the goddamn truth, do you? Get on, bitch. You don't want to hear the truth. That's what that flag stands for. All the Native Americans you killed to plant your houses here. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth.
And if the Interior Department does a bad job managing land, you ought to see what happens when they try to manage people. Often, the more the government helps, the worse things get. Look at what they did to the first Americans.
They put us in a little cage here, call it reservation.
We have the least life expectancy, less than Guatemala, less than Bolivia, Brazil. Hardly anyone reaches 65 anymore.
Activist Russell Means blames the Interior Department's Bureau of Indian Affairs, the agency that claims to help Indians by planning their lives.
We cannot make a plan or a decision without the express consent of the Secretary of Interior. We submit anywhere from 2 to 5 year economic plans. Does that sound like the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union and their failed economic plans?
Most of the crimes against the Indians were that of the government. The government goes in and ruins their lives, and it comes up and says, hey, you need us.
Charged with helping Indians and given tax money to spend billions on them, they created the poorest people in America.
But they still tell the world, we're taking care of our poor little Indians.
The Bureau of Indian Affairs can't even keep track of the Indians' money. More than $2 billion of it is unaccounted for.
Yet no one is even reprimanded. No one's indicted. No one's demoted. No one is fired. No one is even named.
Just more billions lost in the bureaucracy. And where might the money be? I wanted to ask then Secretary of the Interior, Bruce Babbitt. He agreed to an interview, and his staff had us set up our camera gear in his conference room. But when Babbitt arrived, he seemed to change his mind.
I'm not sure why I'm here. I mean, you know, another expose. It's all in a day's business, I understand. Okay, well, let's have at it.
Okay. But before I could ask him anything, he decided he didn't want to talk.
I'm going to fire whoever scheduled this interview.
Why?
Well, what's the name of the show?
We haven't titled it yet. It's probably...
Okay. The government is wasting your money. They are corrupt and incompetent.
Oh, I wouldn't say corrupt. I would argue competent.
Yeah, you'd say incompetent. Look, I'm getting less and less interested in doing this interview. I got to tell you, I really am. I'm not sure how I got here, but
well, we told you it was a consumer report on government. Told your staff.
Yeah. Look, I really don't want to do this now.
And that was that. The interview was over. Now his department wants Congress to give more money to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Should they get it? Should they exist at all?
There's no Bureau of Jewish Affairs. There's no Bureau of Irish Affairs. There's no Bureau of Black or African Affairs.
They sit up there in Washington, D.C., and they legislate laws that affect us, when in fact, they don't know what the heck's going on here.
Whereas the Rohingya tragedy is well known to all, to politicians, to organisations, it continues to intensify. Those who claim to be for peace have left a deafening silence, an incomprehensible indifference. What can we say or think towards such savagery?
of men and women and children who do not have the freedom that you enjoy everyday life.
Why? Because Western world, EU and everything, they have this double talk.
Do you think your society will support this idea? Because there are intensive ties within the society with America historically. Do you think you will have support of the people?
If there is anything to gripe for, it is me griping for. Why did you invade my country 50 years ago? Sat on this land and live off with the fat of the land. And you expect me to be happy?
You are so angry. I can feel it.
Yeah. You treat me as if I am your colony still? You must be kidding. Why would I allow it? Why would I allow you to treat me as if I am your representative here as a colonial governor? We are an independent country. We will survive. We will endure. We can go hungry. But this time, I want my country treated with dignity.
ليش ما يكون فيها تحقيق في مقتل صدام حسين؟ قيادة عربية بالكامل تقتل تشنق في المشانق راح نتفرج. لماذا؟ وممكن الدور جاي عليكم كلكم. نعم. ليش امريكا قاتلت مع صدام حسين ضد الخميني؟ كان صديقها. تشيني كان صديق لصدام حسين. رامي السندي كان وزير الدفاع الامريكي لما كانوا يدمروا في العراق، صديق حميم لصدام حسين، واخيرا باعوه وشنقوه. حتى انتم اصدقاء امريكا، نحن اصدقاء امريكا، بلاش نقول انتم، نحن اصدقاء امريكا كلنا قد توافق امريكا على شنقنا في يوم ما.
Sat on this land and live off with the fat of the land. And you expect me to be happy? Sat on this land and live off with the fat of the land. And you expect me to be happy? Because in the past, that was what really prevented policemen and the military from doing it. Why? Because they were so afraid of this human rights thing, which is a new phenomenon. It's actually the human rights in the guise of human rights. Countries like EU and America are interfering into the affairs of other nations in the guise of human rights.
I will not go 10,000 miles from here to help murder and kill another poor people simply to continue the domination of white slave masters over the darker people of the earth.
Your freedom. Well, now, well, see, you make yourself look crazy. Talking about, I shouldn't go.
I work for the government, for part of the government.
Well, I work for God.
For my religious belief, and you want me to go somewhere and fight? We have been brainwashed. Everything good and of authority was made white. We look at Jesus, we see a white with blonde hair and blue eyes. We look at all the angels, we see white with blonde hair and blue eyes. Now I'm sure if there's a heaven in the sky and the color folks die and go to heaven, where are the color angels? They must be in the kitchen preparing the milk and honey.
The bitter irony is that while trying to protect civilians, to protect the youth, you sometimes, and you admitted that in one of your interviews, that innocent civilians could have become victims. Do you think it is a fair price to pay?
Just like in the Americans, when they drop a bomb there, so powerful that it also kills others.
But you are not America. Do you feel sorry for?
But we are talking of human liability. So it doesn't say that because they're Americans are exempted, and just because I am just a small time government official, I am not exempted. So what's the fairness there? No. When they drop bombs, they kill so many villages, and there's not even a whimper.
The police the same way. They put their club upside your head and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them. Every case of police brutality against a Negro follows the same pattern. They attack you, bust you all upside your mouth, and then take you to court and charge you with assault. What kind of democracy is that? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of social or political system is it when a black man has no voice in court, has nothing on his side other than what the white man chooses to give him? My brothers and sisters, we have to put a stop to this. And it will never be stopped until we stop it ourselves. They attack the victim. And then the criminal who attacked the victim accuses the victim of attacking him. Yes, sir. This is American justice. Yes, sir. That's right. This is American democracy. Yes, and those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy.
America invaded Iraq. What was the excuse? That there were weapons of mass destruction. And yet when they invaded Iraq, so many people were killed. So where is justice now?
So I think it's really hard to avoid
Meaning to say, justice has to be equal. It cannot be a justice for one and justice for another set of standards for two. It has to be equal.
Is that the reason why you turn away from America?
Yes, because they refuse to understand my predicament when they knew that they were also in the same predicament on a larger scale. America, remember Panama? Okay, they invaded Panama, a sovereign state, okay, in Central America. So what was the purpose there? They went inside, seized the country, arrested the president, brought him outside the country, placed him in a detention cell in New York. He faced a trial federal court and is convicted. What happened to the invasion? And what was the reason? Drugs. You invade a country. Me, I am just fighting the criminals in my country. I never invaded a country. You have to look at it this way. There is so much incongruity in the principles that are being followed by nations. The powerful ones, they can invent this weapon of mass destruction. Oh, we can invade your country.
Ustedes no ven el imperio yanqui. Ustedes no ven la masacre que el Estado genocida de Israel cometió contra un grupo de pacifistas que iban llevando una carga humanitaria al pueblo palestino que está en Gaza, rodeado por todos lados por Israel. No les permiten ni agua. Masacraron a una gente ahí, ustedes lo vieron, ¿verdad? Bueno, vean ustedes Estados Unidos. Estados Unidos lo que dijo es que está preocupado. Están preocupados. Imagínense, Alcalá, Dios nos libre, que eso hubiera ocurrido en aguas venezolanas. Ya estaríamos invadidos. Tengan la seguridad que ya nos hubieran invadido. Pero no, como es Israel, se le permite de todo. Entonces, ese es un ejemplo de doble moral. El gobierno de Obama condena el terrorismo, siempre y cuando no sea cometido por ellos mismos. Por ellos, Estados Unidos o sus aliados, Israel. Nos acusa a nosotros, a mí me acusan de patrocinar el terrorismo. Son ellos los que patrocinan el terrorismo. Aprovecho para condenar de nuevo, desde el fondo de mi alma y de mis vísceras, al Estado de Israel. Maldito seas, Estado de Israel. Maldito seas, terroristas y asesinos. Y viva el pueblo palestino. ¡Viva! Pueblo heroico, pueblo bueno. Ahora, fíjense ustedes, la oposición venezolana no ha dicho ni nada contra Israel. No, que Israel financia a la oposición venezolana, financia la contrarrevolución. Incluso hay grupos de terroristas israelíes del Mossad que andan detrás de mí tratando de matarme.
So you once said that you don't want America in your country. So you were serious.
Yes, I said no. I said American troops. That one day during my term, if I survive the CIA, oh no. If I survive the CIA, I have stayed 5 years.
You talk a lot about assassination. Do you really expect that to happen?
They do it. Does it surprise you?
You're the one who's guilty. Lawmakers, the politicians, the Colombian drug lords, all you who lobby against making drugs legal, just like you did with alcohol during the Prohibition. You're the one who's guilty. I mean, come on, let's kick the ballistics here. Ain't no Uzis made in Harlem. I mean, not one of us in here owns a poppy field. This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is big business. This is the American way.
العراق ما عنده، وحتى لو عند العراق سعيد مارشال، لو باكستان عندها قنبله ذريه، والهند عندها قنبله ذريه، والصين وروسيا وبريطانيا وفرنسا وامريكا، ما كلها عندها قنابل ذريه، كلهم بيدمروها كويس؟ فندمر كل الدول اللي عندها سلاح دمار شامل. تجي قوة أجنبية تحتل دولة عربية وتشنق رئيسها واحنا نتفرج عليهم نضحكوا. أبو عمار قعد في الأسر كم عام واحنا نتفرج عليه ونعقدوا قمة بدون أبو عمار. ليش ما قلنا القمة ما تنعقدش لغاية ما يطلع أبو عمار من الأسر؟ وأخيرا سمموه وقتلوه. ليش ما الحق نمشي لمجلس الأمن حق المقتل أبو عمار؟ وليش ما الحقوا في شنق صدام حسين؟ كيف يصير حرب يشنق ورئيس دولة عربية عضو في الجامعة العربية؟ لما نتكلم عن سياسة صدام حسين والخلافة معاه السياسة، ممكن كلنا مختلفين سياسيين معاه، مختلفين حتى مع بعضنا نحن الآن. ما في حاجة تجمعنا أبدا إلا القاعة هذه. ليش ما يكون فيها تحقيق في مقتل صدام حسين؟ قيادة عربية بالكامل تقتل تشنق في المشانق، راح نتفرج لماذا؟ وممكن الدور جاي عليكم كلكم. نعم.
Tratando de matarme. Esa es una de las amenazas que tenemos nosotros. Solo que los tenemos controlados. Sabemos dónde se mueven en las islas del Caribe. Tenemos muchos amigos en todas partes, pues. Y ellos no son invisibles. No son el hombre invisible. Y son torpes también, la mayor parte de las veces. Están acostumbrados a pelear contra indefensos como esta expedición humanitaria. A medianoche les cayeron en helicóptero, ráfaga de ametralladora, una gente que estaba durmiendo, seguramente la mayoría, en aguas internacionales. Es un crimen de guerra. ¿Dónde está la Corte Penal Internacional? ¿Dónde están las Naciones Unidas? ¿Dónde está la justicia en este mundo, por el amor de Dios? ¿Dónde está la justicia en este mundo?
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes.
2 years ago, you shocked the media, revealing that you had been molested by a priest when you were 14 or 15 years old. And then later you even identified that priest.
Yes.
He was an American national.
Correct. Not only I, the whole class. 2 generations up and 2 generations down. All of us.
You were 70 years old at that time. Why would you make that confession like more than 50 years later?
The abuses of the priests are being filmed everywhere. There was an Italian underground film, and I am sure you saw that, a priest running naked over there. And they don't really bother to investigate. There is no condemnation, nothing. The shoulder of the priest and the religious people doing the shenanigans. Well, it is as if it's just a part of the show of the night.
Now find the priest, here's the pedophile, here's the priest, find the pedophile, find the priest, find the pedophile, there, move him around. Then we're going to say to make a. No judge, then make him a fool. Here we go. Don't you ask, don't you tell, you might end up right in hell. Here we go, here we go. Here's your check direct from Rome, buy yourself a brand new home, moving around, moving around.
Is it liberality? Is it because you do not want to condemn your own countrymen? Or is it because the victims were just natives? Never mind about them. We were considered natives. And sometimes pictured as apes.
Was that important for you that he was an American?
Oh, I don't know. I brought it for the first time.
Yeah,
because I called all the bishops stupid. And they are really stupid. You know that? Because there is a book here which also exposes their shenanigans, and it's called Altar of Secrets. And may I have a copy? I'll give you one.
Okay.
It was wrote by a narrator of the Bishops' Conference.
Mm-hmm. Altar of Secrets. Mm-hmm.
Give it to you. Read it, and you will understand how the
Thank you.
Catholic Church has corrupted this country.
Before we get into the Casual Killing Act, the Casual Killing Act was written because of the number of people who were killed while being corrected. Okay. And if any slave resists his master, owner, or other person by his or her order, correcting such slave, and shall happen to be killed in such correction, it shall not be counted felony, but the master, owner, and every other person so giving correction shall be acquitted of all punishment and accusation for the same, as if such accident had never happened. So that means that if you happen to be correcting someone and you beat them to death, you know how hard it is to beat someone to death? I mean, I thought about that. I said it happens so frequently that they created a law so that you wouldn't feel any what? No guilt, because you were simply correcting them. It wasn't your fault. So I went back to look at who was beating folks to death. I wanted to know. And it was white women. White women were beating black children to death. That's who was being beaten to death. But it wasn't her fault. She was just correcting them. You see, what we do is we rob ourselves of our own humanity when we refuse to look at this stuff. We rob ourselves of our humanity. And that's what people didn't know happened. Going forward, one more. Then you had the mental health folks. This is how we got in. We got in to try to fix it. In the early years of the 19th century, a physician named Samuel A. Cartwright argued that two particular forms of mental illness caused by nerve disorders were prevalent among slaves. One was drapetomania, which was diagnosable by a single symptom: the uncontrollable urge to escape from slavery. So now what we've done is we've now pathologized your desire to be free. Must be something wrong with them. Keep trying to free themselves. And again, it would be funny if it weren't in journals. You see, all of this is to remove the cognitive Dissonance. Now we have, look at all the people joining in. You got Linnaeus, you got anthropology, you got physicians. All of them saying they deserve it. It's not us. We don't need to adjust anything. And if they just tried harder, how about you people just pull yourselves up from your bootstraps? What's the matter with you? The playing field has been leveled. Well, we're going to see if in fact it's been leveled. Or is that conjecture? Move forward. Now I want you to look at this photo very closely, and I want you to see who's in it. More important than the man hanging, because you got to understand the lynchings that occurred in America happened after slavery, not during. Thousands of lynchings happened after slavery, because this is a reaction to white fear of what we would do once freed. But we didn't create a vigilante group to take out white people, but they did create a vigilante group to take us out now that we're free. See, that happened after slavery. They were called the what? The Ku Klux Klan. They don't wear hoods anymore, they wear suits. But they're alive and well all over the world, even here. So, look at who's in the picture. I want you to look at this little girl in particular. You can't see her closely, but she's actually grimacing, like smirking. Now, remember, let's go back to the puppy concept here. She would be loathed and torn up probably if this was a puppy, which means he's less than that, because she's not disturbed. This little girl is not disturbed by this, but she should be, shouldn't she? People always ask me, they go, Joy, what was the impact on white people? There it is, right there. Can't feel any empathy for him. None, zero, zip. There's a little one back here, even smaller. Because whatever she's been taught or told, socialized to believe, makes him no longer human. That's the greatest danger to white people, is that they can't feel it. And there's a reason why white people can't feel what we're talking about. My God, what would you then feel? It's tough. So I've got to believe, oh, it's all over now. It's not my fault. I don't benefit. It's not a big deal. Let's move on. It's not all of those things. But we don't say that to Jewish people. I dare you. But you have to understand, when you unearth this one, that's what we did to our children.
See, Lyndon Johnson, he can always raise an argument about law and order because he never talks about justice. But black people fall for that same argument, and they go around talking about lawbreakers. We did not make the laws in this country. We are neither morally nor legally confined to those laws. Those laws that keep them up keep us down. You got to begin to understand that. For 400 years, she taught you white nationalism, and you lapped it up. You taught it to your children. You had your children thinking that everything black was bad. Black cows don't give good milk. Black hens don't lay eggs. Black for funerals, white for weddings. That's white nationalism. Santa Claus. A white honky who slides down a black chimney and comes out white. We tend to equate progress with concessions. We can no longer make that mistake. You see, when they gave us that nigger astronaut, you say we were making progress, but I told you they were going to lose him in space. He didn't get that far. You put Adam Clayton Powell in office and you couldn't keep him. What you think they're going to do with Thurgood Marshall when they get tired of him? They gave you Walter Washington of Washington, D.C., and you said we were making progress. That's not progress. See, it's no in-between. You're either free or you're a slave. There's no such thing as second-class citizenship. That's like telling me you can be a little bit pregnant.
This is a similar photo to the one that is used in Denzel's movie. Now, and again, most important, this is a man that's being burned. Also, I won't read the depiction, but there are newspaper accounts of this. It's written in a book called 100 Years of Lynching by Ginsburg. No pictures, just newspapers that say not only did they burn him, they decapitated him, cut him into pieces, and used parts of his body as things to put on mantles. So people would say, get me a tongue, would you, or a liver, a little crisp, so I could put it on the mantle. Now, again, I want you to look at the folks. I want you to look at who's here. We're not talking about the toothless, big gut, hooded wonder, are we? We're looking at plain old, common, dressed up folks. They're squeezing, please, I want my picture taken. Are you following me? This is somebody's cousin, uncle, somebody. And the ability to do that, dehumanize this man and rob them of their humanity all at the same time. All at the same time. That is the most dangerous, treacherous thing that could happen. What did Hitler do? He dehumanized human beings, put babies in ovens. Anything that robs us of our humanity is a danger to everyone. And that is what's going on with people of African descent all over the world, because not only did it get done here, but who did we tell? The entire world we told these people don't deserve any value.
The fact that Malcolm X had been murdered probably drove Huey and I to a point to say that we was going to have to create an organization reflective of what he was talking about. The fact that Malcolm said that by legal constitutional right, the Second Amendment, that every black man and woman, black person in this country had a right to have a shotgun in their home to defend themselves from unjust attacks by racism, which is one point that influenced us very much. But what influenced us even more was Malcolm's emphasis that we must have a political organization that dealt most immediately with the housing and the clothing and shoes and food for the people. That while we deal with this, ultimately, the revolutionary process will go on, and it will probably still be somewhat of a violent revolution. As you know, even in this period, although there's numerous violence still being committed against black people.
How many people think they understand what racism is? Show of hands. Come on, you know, you think you know. I'm not suggesting I know. I just have a couple of definitions that kind of came to me as I thought about. How many people think there are white racists? That there are white racists out there? How many think there are black racists out there? Okay. Now, this is an interesting thing because this becomes important as we begin to define concepts. Now, I do that. I usually define concepts all the way. But one of the things that I do is I try to help people get a picture of what I mean by racism. So tell me how it is. I'm going to, first category is white racism, then we'll deal with black racism. So white racism. Tell me the ways in which white racism adversely impacts the lives of black people. Just what are the ways that white racism can adversely impact the lives of black people as a group? What are some of those ways? I'm sorry? Power, but how is that defined specifically? Education, okay. I'm sorry? Economically, employment. What else? Housing, what else? Policing. Why are we here today? Healthcare, okay. Now, we could actually kind of grow that list. Now we're going to move over to black racism. Tell me the ways in which black racism adversely impacts the lives of white people as an entire group. Thank you. The reason why you become silent, there's one that always comes up, and that's fear. White people are afraid of black people.
Do you know?
Oh, no. They are afraid of us. And it's a very interesting thing because black people know it. We know white people are afraid. But you have to start getting into the psychology. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid? But it's an interesting dynamic. Now, also you see the difference in what racism is, do you not? Racism implies you have not just prejudice, but the power to do something with that prejudice. Now, I don't like you, not only that, but I'm going to control whether you can get, I may say I hate you. I hate white people. I hate them. It's not going to change you getting that, loan when you go to the bank. I can hate you all the way to the bank. Not going to change. Do you see the difference? That whereas white racism says, not only do I not like you, but I'm going to change the impact of where you can live. I'm going to determine with that racism where your powers are. You following me? And I'm talking about as a group, not an individual, because people said, I remember when my uncle didn't. I'm not talking about your uncle. I'm talking about the whole group. I'm not talking about an incident. That's a difference. But white people are afraid. So let's get into how this fear impacts criminal justice. Because if white people in this room are afraid of black people, guess who else is afraid of black people? Only they have guns.
We have to understand that we're talking about our survival and nothing else. Whether or not this beautiful race of people is going to survive on the earth. That's what we're talking about. Nothing else. Nothing else. If you do not think he's capable of wiping us out, check out the white race. Wherever they have gone, they have ruled, conquered, murdered, and plagued. Whether they are the majority or the minority, they always rule. They always rule. Always rule. And check out the pattern in which they move. They came to this country. They didn't know a damn thing about this country. The red man showed them how to adapt to this country. He showed them how to grow corn. He showed them how to hunt. And when the Indians finished showing it, he wiped them out. He wiped them out. He wiped them out. He was not satisfied. He went to South America. The Aztec Indians said, this is our silver. This is our copper. These are our metals. These are our statues. We build them for the beauty of our people. After the Indians showed it to him, he took it and he wiped them out. He wiped them out. He's been able to make us hate each other. He has transplanted that hate and the love for each other for a love of his country.
So, now let's look at what he said. Simply put, white cops are afraid of black men. We don't talk about it. We pretend it doesn't exist. We claim color blindness. We say white officers treat black men the same way they treat white men, but that's a lie. And here's a big one. In fact, the bigger, the darker the black man, the greater the fear.
Put your hand behind you.
Any big black men in here? You got a big old bullseye on you, even if you got the suit on. And it's the truth, because statistics bear it out. The African community knows this. Hell, most whites know it. Yet, even though it's essential, if not the defining ingredient in the makeup of police racism, white cops won't admit it to themselves or to others. He goes on to talk about actually learning it in the academy. Norm Stamper, he told on everybody. He had folks indicted. He now lives in a cabin on a mountain somewhere in the San Juan Islands. That's where he lives. Nobody knows where he lives because he knows they're coming after him, and they have. This is a statement from the book also. Race and class discrimination are all too real in every phase of the criminal justice system, from arrest to sentencing. Impoverished black defendants, and this is going to sound familiar to you, are far more likely to wind up on death row than richer middle-class whites, or the 3,000, and of the 3,700 inmates now awaiting execution nationwide, 43% are African American. Black defendants are not accorded the same due process rights as whites. Their cases are not given the same scrutiny and consideration afforded to white defendants. Not now, not ever, not in this country.
You're one black man who went to a good, essentially white high school in the city of New York.
That's
you
right.
obviously had a good education. A good many of the people who work with you here in SNCC can say the same thing.
And we're saying that...
And you're a black man who came from a New York ghetto.
And we're saying that there's a system that allows for one or two black people to get out and that's the rationale for keeping other black people down.
And it has nothing to do with the unwillingness or inability of the Negro to help himself and to work hard.
That's the rationale, that the reason why black people aren't this is because they're lazy, unambitious, stupid, have rhythm, and they eat watermelon.
You call on the black man to refuse to respond to his draft call.
That is correct. And we will continue to do so while there's breath in our bodies.
Do you really believe that the military policies of the United States are designed to exterminate the black man, as you've said?
I most certainly do. I look at the recent statement by racist McNamara, who says that 30% of the people that are going to be drafted now under his new system are going to be black people. And that's nothing more than black urban removal.
The white liberal who supported civil rights for so long with time and effort and money, what is your feeling about him?
Well, I think that there's no reason why they should stop supporting the movement now. I certainly feel that if they're genuinely interested in black people, and since black people have charted a course, they believe in that program, they will continue to give to it. They need more white people to civilize whites. They need them to civilize the savages in Cicero, who throw rocks and bricks at a peaceful and lovable black man like Dr. Martin Luther King, who would not even hurt a fly. Well, that's very important, because our uncles and our fathers and our older brothers died in World War I fighting Nazism to protect the Poles, and those same Poles turn around and throw rocks and bricks at us after we died to save their lives. And people talk about we are savages.
Mr. Carmichael, if you had the chance to stand up in front of the white community and say anything you desired, say to him, "Understand me, white man," what would you say?
I would say, understand yourself, white man, that the white man's burden should not have been preached in Africa, but it should have been preached among you. That you need now to civilize yourself. You have moved to destroy and disrupt. You have taken people away. You have broken down their systems, and you have called all that civilization. And we who have suffered at this are now saying to you, you are the killers of the dreams. You are the savages. Yes, it is you who have always been uncivilized. Civilize yourself.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before.
This is what the man said. It was dismal. But he doesn't believe it's possible in the current system. So what we have to realize is we need to be realistic about that. So what I have to do is teach my sons how to navigate this, do I not? Doesn't matter what I think and, oh, baby, you know, we are the world. No, this is real. You do have a bullseye on you. When you're in the elevator with the only white woman there, and you're the big black man, she's clutching her purse and she's worried. That's a reality. And if you startle her too much, it used to mean you get lynched. Matter of fact, I think she could scream rape now and you'd get taken down.
So we got to understand here the educational program that you have to be able to figure out whether it will go on the right lines, where the people will end up in a situation where they can be able to really control themselves. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, the people that take this local foundation and start stealing money because they won't be really educated to why it's a people's thing anyway. You understand what I'm saying? With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be an educational program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have an education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionalist movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more, and before you know it, they'll be capitalists, and before you know it, we'll have Negro imperialists.
If you ever think about me, and if you think about me, niggas, and if you ain't gonna do no revolutionary act, forget about me. I don't want myself on your mind if you're not gonna work for the people. Like we always said, if you actually make a commitment at the age of 20, and you say, I don't want to make that commitment because of the simple reason that I'm too young to die, I want to live a little bit longer. What you did, you did already. You have to understand, the people have to pay the price for peace. If you dare to struggle, you dare to win. If you dare not to struggle, then goddamn it, you don't deserve to win. Let me say peace to you if you're willing to fight for it. Let me say it in the spirit of liberation. I've been gone for a little while. At least my body's been gone. You ain't got to repeat after me. At least my body's been gone for a little while. But I'm back now, and I believe that I'm back to stay. I believe that I'm going to do my job, and I believe that I was born not to die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm going to die in a car wreck. I don't believe I'm going to die from slipping on a piece of ice. I don't believe I'm going to die because I got a bad heart. I don't believe I'm going to die because of lung cancer. I believe that I'm going to be able to die in the thing that I was born for. I believe that I'm going to be able to die high off the people. I believe that I will be able to die as a revolutionary in the international revolutionary proletariat struggle. And I hope that each one of you will be able to die in the international proletariat revolutionary struggle, either be able to live in it. And I think that struggle is going to come. Why don't you live for the people? Why don't you struggle for the people? Why don't you die for the people?